All right, and hello everyone. Let's do this sound check. See if you hear me. And giving it a try again. Let's see. Give this a try again. All right, that looks good. So welcome on into the Friday night Prof show. This is called Prof Friday Night Fights Round 12. Okay, and in particular, we're going to be talking about the state of Indiana tonight. Boy, it looks really, really bad. Okay, it looks really, really bad. And I just realized there's one other thing I need to do. Let's see. All right. Yeah, so this is Prof show, and tonight we're going to be talking about some things but we're talking about Delphi. So welcome on in to everybody, all you new people. We're so glad to have you watching. Come on in. We'd appreciate your participation here in the channel. If you happen to be on the replay, please do join the comment section below. It's really wonderful down there. Okay, and um, and anyone seeking any information, if you want to know how to contact me, how to support the channel, how to find any of our various sites and pathways and merchandise and anything, please look at the link tree that is tagged or pinned at the top of the chat. And in that link tree, you'll find all that you need to know. All right. So glad to see everybody here. And Anyway, now typically on a Friday night fights, I'm talking about all the problems that exist in a. You might wonder, well, oh, right, wow, Prof, why tonight? Why Jerry Holman and Cicero and McClelland and the state of Indiana and that be a bullshit? Well, I'll tell you why, because this is the biggest fight, okay? This is the biggest fight. So we got a lot to talk about, and it's going to be interesting. We're going to look at some stuff. And the way that I see this thing going tonight, it's only going to get worse as the minutes tick by because it's a really ugly scenario, honestly. And there's so much to talk about. Geez, I don't even know where to get started. But I'll just go ahead and on uh, dive on in head first, and we'll see. So please do a few things. Let's see. Make sure your chat is on all chat and not top chat. Make sure you hit the like when you come in and when you leave. That you have hit the like. Um, if you're able to support the channel by commenting down below, and also if you want to donate, we have various pathways to donate. So we'll get into that stuff. But I'm glad to see everybody here, and please let everybody know we're live. Okay, we want to get as many people in here as possible because we will talk about important things tonight. And I know it's rather late, but I wanted to do a late night show because I felt like it, and that's what we're doing. So we're going to start off like this now, guys. You might need a you might need you might need a sick bucket. Okay, is what we're going to start off with. Now look, I guarantee you that what you're about to see, it's the absolute worst look for the state of Indiana, or should I say, I shouldn't say the entire state. Let me say this. What you're about to see is the absolute ugliest uh, and the worst look for the Indiana State Police uh, that you've ever seen in the 92 years since its creation. This is the absolute worst look for the Indiana State Police that you've ever seen. And hey, we are going to continue to make sure that the world sees how bad this is and how ugly it all is. And and that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to get started like this. Now, I'm going to bring you guys back to a very negative moment, but we're going to look at this in detail, in great detail. Okay, so please bear with me as we do that, and we'll take this ride together. Right now, notice here when this starts. This is the post sentencing press conference. Uh, who's that? Who's that? Who do you see first? Who's the big dog? Let's back it up. Okay, let's look at who's the big dog who walks out first, like a big guy. There you go. Okay. And who follows second? Let's see who follows second. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. It's odd that they're shaped similarly. They're equally shaped. Let's continue. And look, third and fourth. You see, there's no accident there because this is all optics. This entire case has been optics from day one. Like let's look at it again. Right? Let's look at it again. All optics. Yep, that one. Yep, that one. Yep, that one. Yep, that one and that one. And that one and that one. And that one. Wow, wow, wow. Deep breath, Doug.
Good morning. My name is Jeremy Piers with the Indiana State Police. I'd like to thank you all for being here today and for your continued cooperation throughout the course of this trial. I'd also like to extend a special thank you to the Canal Center for allowing us to use their facility today. As we move forward, we remain committed to keeping Abigail Williams and Liberty German at the center of our focus. Their memory has guided us every step of the investigation, and the photo displayed behind us serves as a powerful reminder of why we are here and what this case has always been about. Due to the gag order, it has been some time since we have spoke publicly about this case. Now that the order has been lifted, we're grateful to be here today and speak to all of you. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce to you the speakers: Mike Patty from the families, Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett, Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter, and Carroll County Prosecutor Nick McClellan.
I just noticed that. Did you notice he said Mike Patty from the families, plural? Mike Patty from the families.
At the conclusion of their remarks, Prosecutor McClellan will take a limited number of questions, and he has requested that all questions be directed to him. On behalf of those standing behind me here today, and
Important point there. Mr. McClelland has asked that all questions be directed to him. Why? Why?
all those who have dedicated countless hours
Control freak much? Is that control freak much?
into this investigation, we thank you all for your continued support. I'd like to introduce to you our first speaker, Mike Patty.
Thank you, Jeremy. I don't have a nice speech all prepared. It was kind of a last minute thing here, but I really wanted to take the time
Dude, you had 7 years.
to send out my appreciation that justice has been served for the girls.
No, it hasn't. A wrongful conviction is not justice served for 2 little girls who were brutally murdered, slaughtered, left in the woods in the most bizarre fashion imaginable. And you all pretend that it's just a normal, everyday murder.
I want to thank the jurors. Hope they get a chance to.
What's with the nervous tick? You notice him and Carter? I wish I had my mouse that I could show. Do you notice him and Carter have this tick that's like,
See this, that they took time out of their lives and remained open-minded and objective and was able to look at the information and deliver a verdict.
I'd like you all to pay special close attention here. You got Kathy Shank, okay? Mike Patty, Doug Carter. Like, you cannot make this up. You cannot make this up.
For that, I will always be grateful. The community,
Thanking the jurors for this conviction.
community has embraced our families from day one and continues to lift us up and support us.
Financially.
And again, for that, I'll always be grateful. I want to thank them.
For covering up the murders of
The investigative team
2 little
and the
girls.
prosecution, thank you
For railroading
for
Richard
staying
Allen.
steadfast and continuing to work towards this. It's been almost 8 years
Of
coming.
bullshit.
If I live to make it 80, it'll almost be 10% of my life. It's been
Who
spent
cares?
working
No one
on this.
cares. No one cares.
And to the judge, I want to thank her
For railroading
well.
Richard Allen.
for her steadfast, staying on course, staying on.
And not allowing any other exculpatory evidence, including that of third-party suspects, with multiple confessions by numerous individuals
track and helping us get through this.
Wrongful conviction and railroading
Thank you very much.
for the bullshit. Nervous tick.
Tony?
Tony. Now here's an interesting moment for me, okay? Because I don't know how many of you are men and you get it how guys act with each other, but this is it's a little not normal because Mike Patty has suddenly taken the driver's wheel here. He's taken the wheel. Notice, okay, let's back it up a bit. Mike Patty's not directing the show. He's not running the show, but notice.
Of course, staying on track and helping us get through this. Thank you very much. Tony?
Tony, get your ass up there. So who's really running shit? Who's really running shit in this press conference? He tells Tony what to do.
Good morning.
It's not
At the
good.
end of 2016 and the beginning of 2017 completely changed the fabric of Carroll County. We lost 6 beautiful young girls,
Yeah, but you forgot about the 4 black ones.
and all of that happened within a 6-month time span.
And they're obviously connected, even though the troll farm who works for you is trying to spread the narrative all across social media that they are not.
My office is not a part of the investigation into the Flora fires that's being headed up by the state police.
And Brock Russell leading the charge, who was also head of methamphetamine, just like Jerry Holman.
We would do anything that they would ask for us to do, and I know they're working extremely hard on that case as well.
No, they're not.
Carroll County is
But that's okay, because FBI will be taking care of it.
a tight-knit community, about 20,000 people.
Who are all colluding together to cover up the murders of 6 of its own, but they only claim the 2.
It used to be a place where people didn't lock their doors. I believe that the verdict and the sentencing will help ease some of that sense of security.
No, it's the most shameful thing that your county has ever been a part of. Guaranteed, sir.
For the people of Carroll County. The people who live here are very resilient.
And crooked.
I think you can see that just in the families, the Germans, the Patties, the Williams.
And all the grifters and money launderers on the case.
Carroll County is an amazing place to live, to work, to raise your family. I want to thank all of the people of
And purchase and sell methamphetamine like it's gone out of style.
Carroll County and the families for their patience during this investigation. I keep hearing the word closure.
There's no closure. Closure will be when the right people and the truth is told about this crime, and it's not even close.
People are coming up to me saying, I bet that you're glad that there's finally closure.
There's no closure.
There will never be any closure in this case.
No, there sure won't. Not as long as the killers are walking free and the law enforcement is covering up for them.
The Germans and the Williams family
Are also doing the same,
lost their daughters,
unfortunately.
their granddaughters,
Unfortunately.
their siblings.
Unfortunately.
Justice, a form of justice was served.
No, it has not been served. Let's you made an error in your notes.
But it does not bring Abby or Libby back.
Well, nothing will, especially the millions of dollars you're pulling out of this case.
These families will live every day without 2 of the most important people in their lives. They're missing milestones because of a low-life coward decided to take their innocent.
A low-life coward? Really? Richard Allen? You believe he did it? Or do you know he didn't, but you're just choosing to further spread the image of him as a low-life coward?
Lives. They did not deserve this.
You mean he did not do this? Is that what you're saying?
Today is not closure.
No, it's sure not.
It is just turning the page and starting a new chapter. My heart is and always has been broken for these families.
No, it's for that it's caused you to have to cover up for the families.
I want them to know that we stand with them, and I want to apologize to them that it took 8 years for us to get to this point. This case
Why didn't you apologize for the 70 days of lost and destroyed evidence and all the other destroyed evidence that we'll never know of, and the marathon footage and all the other things that are so important, and the untested DNA?
was quite the undertaking for the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. There are so many people that put a lot of time in assisting us with bringing it to a conclusion.
Yes, I'm glad you said conclusion. You brought it to a conclusion, not to justice.
You see a lot of them right here, and there are many that aren't standing up here. There are so many agencies to thank for standing by our side. Just to give you an idea of the support that we had just for the trial, we had 36 outside agencies help us for just the security during the trial. On the afternoon of February 14th, at least that many came to help us investigate this case. Everyone from detectives down to dispatchers.
Yeah, and you kicked them all off and said, no, we got control of this, and we don't need any help. We don't want any help. This is a cover-up. Everyone else has to get out. Everyone who's not under our direct control.
To help investigate or just to answer phones. I remember a conversation after we found the girls with Jerry Holman about whether or not we were going to take the case or Indiana State Police were going to take the case.
Why is this narrative so important to put across? Remember that they've been really pushing this since the verdict. They've been really pushing this story about who was going to take the case, and the deal made about who was going to take the case.
Well, it was not my decision. It was not my decision, but I knew we didn't have the resources needed to do this on our own. Holman made a commitment that if we took the case, ISP wouldn't leave us and they would stand by our side and provide any of those resources that we needed, and they did just that. Tobe Lesenby was the sheriff at the time, and he asked ISP to...
Where is he now, by the way? Why is he not a part of this? He's been awfully quiet for about 5 years.
To stand with us. I want to thank Doug Carter and the rest of the Indiana State Police
For covering our asses.
for being with us during this time. The reason justice was served today was due to one person, a person that only knows how to give.
By the way, he's describing investigator Kathy Shank, not a little old lady. Okay, you see something all of these people try to do, and they've gotten away with it pretty well because no one's out here calling it out like I am. They use old ladies because they know that most people will never look over or beyond the surface. So they like to cast her as a little old lady, just like Sarah Elrod Osbrook, little old lady. But she is far from just a little old lady, okay? Full-time investigator with the police.
She has given herself literally for free to this investigation in different ways since about March of 2017.
So we'll give her the $300,000 reward money.
Kathy Shank, while filing, scanning, organizing, found a tip that led us to be here today. Throughout this investigation, especially when things happened during the month, for things that happened during the month of 2017, that was a time when Kathy was not helping us. When she would come across something that she didn't know, she would always bring that to an investigator, and every time that she brought us something and said, "Did you know this?" We knew it, except for the tip that she brought us that got us here today.
Smells like bullshit. And where there's smoke, there's fire. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Okay, that whole story smells like bullshit, and everyone knows it. Everyone knew it from the beginning, and ever since, we've consistently known that the fact that you have to push that story as a narrative point, just like you have to push the me and Holman couldn't decide who was going to take this case. These consistent narrative points that you all push have been what's raised the red flags. It's the smoke to the fire.
To borrow a term I believe was started by Becky Patty, a saying that meant enough to me that I had it on a sticker on my computer, in my car, and on my refrigerator at home. The goal was actually to be able to say the words, and they ring true. There is zero doubt that justice has been served, and today is the day. Thank you.
I'm going to vomit. That's literally vomit worthy. That's literally vomit worthy. This entire press conference, like I said, this is the absolutely worst look in Indiana State Police history. What you're observing right here. There's nothing that's ever looked as bad as this. And it's about to get worse when this dumbass comes up to talk.
I had prepared remarks today, but I decided walking in here that I wasn't going to read them. John Perrine reminded me that 2,866 days ago, this entire thing began. I didn't know what I would think, and I didn't realize today we were going to be walking into the same room where many of you were, I believe, in, again, from memory, April of 2019 or that time frame. And over the course of these last many years now, several of us, me included, have been mocked and ostracized for our emotion, for our inability to answer questions that you might ask.
The lizard himself.
And the thought that we're something other than human beings. I'm not going to apologize for that.
You're not going to apologize for anything.
I often say I wish people could see what goes on behind the scenes, and not just with people dressed like me, but citizens of this county and of this city. It's amazing, amazing acts of unbelievable courage and self-service and self-sacrifice. I wish you all could have been in the courtroom today and heard the victim impact statements.
No, I'm glad we didn't. That's the last thing that needs to be broadcast all over the fucking YouTubes.
I'll always remember them. And I hope you'll get the transcripts and read what was said and try and understand the context of those words, even though you weren't in the courtroom. Over the course of these last many years, there have been many, many, many investigative strategies.
That'd be a bullshit. That'd be a bullshit. This is investigative strategies like losing everything that was absolutely important that would have led to solving the crime. Yeah, that's an investigative strategy for your ass. Yeah. Investigative strategies, randomly choosing in April of 2019 to switch sketches willy-nilly, and the age drops 20 years in the suspect. And Jesus Christ, man, the level, I hope your hip waders are on, because the level of bullshit with these people, especially this guy right here, it's just it's nauseating.
Any notion of a cover-up, any notion of us deciding the outcome of this, any notion of any connection to anything else is not correct.
Whoa, why did you feel you had to say that, Douglas? That's really odd that you would feel that you'd have to say that. This is a post-sentencing press conference, and you're mighty on the defense Like, why are we so on the defense? This is a post-sentencing press conference, and you're on the defense? You're on the narrative pushing? Whoops. There we go. I'm going to back it up again so you all can try not to vomit again. Just hold on. This is not a cover-up, and I'd walk over hot shards of glass.
And read what was said and try and understand the context of those words, even though you weren't in the courtroom. Over the course of these last many years, there have been many investigative strategies.
Investigative strategies.
Any notion of a cover-up? Any notion of us deciding the outcome of this?
You decided it.
Any notion of
It's
any
a cover-up.
connection to anything else?
It's connected to Flora
It's not
and a bunch of
correct.
other murders.
It's not correct.
It is correct.
I've never been a detective in my entire lifetime, but I get to represent some of the best on the planet Earth. And I listened to them intently. And when they made strategy decisions associated with what the next steps would be,
Strategy.
my job was to support them, and I stand by those decisions, every single one of them. The gag order. We lived by that. We lived by that gag order.
No, you didn't, because you had YouTubers, okay, leaking for you. Do you think we don't know? I mean, we lived through it. All the leaks came from your side.
The defense did not.
Oh, what's with the defensiveness, Doug Carter? So we're going from one. Do you see the reactionism or the reactiveness? Did I invent a word? This is reactionism. His entire demeanor and this entire performance is reactionism, okay?
And it cost a human life.
Oh, it costs more than one human life, buddy.
Anybody that shares those photographs
And they will be continue to be shared, by the way.
of those two little girls should be held accountable. Whether they're in the public sphere, whether they're emailed to you, whether you found them in a place you didn't want them to see. I hope that if you ever see them, you'll picture your own children as Abby and Libby. I'll never.
No, Douglas, because the importance in those photos is not the children. The importance in the photos are the sticks that are particularly symmetrically arranged on their bodies and the posing of the bodies, which match two of the figurations of the tarot deck. There's an extreme amount of importance in those photos, which is why you don't want them shown.
Never forgive that. I will never, ever forgive that.
No one cares. You're out of here.
We lived by the gag order. Documents were released from the defense that drove a public narrative that many of you talked about.
No, the public narrative hasn't even begun. Like the public narrative in truth has not even begun, because there are people with things to say about this narrative that are still not able to say them because they're preserving the integrity of Richard Allen's case in case of a second trial or a successful appeal.
And damn it, I wish I could have responded. But I was not going to violate what Judge Gall said. So they were able to get these documents out there and create a public narrative that you and many others, many of you, and many others believed around the globe.
Here we go again with a narrative push.
Baldwin and Rossi are responsible for that.
Arrest them, bro.
Not this team.
Put them in prison. Why are you performing for the cameras and trying to convince the public of these things? If it's in your capacity to take care of it, you should have addressed it and not continued to push this narrative towards the public, because you knew this was going to be replayed on mass media endlessly. So you're out here doing a whole fucking entire performance, uh, rather than address what you could have addressed when you could have addressed it, because you know that it's all that'd be a bullshit.
The family effects, I think you'll see the words that were spoken by the folks that spoke today about their lives and how they've been forever changed,
No one cares.
how they'll never be the same.
No one cares.
And they said it in ways that were
Manipulative and
beautiful in some
narcissistic.
kind of a mysterious way.
No, there's nothing mysterious here. It's all
There's
fucking
an attorney in
obvious.
Indianapolis by the name of Guy Relford, and I heard Guy on the radio after the verdict when a lot of hate mail came, death threats came.
Oh, you want to talk about death threats, Doug Carter? Why'd you allow Greeno to threaten to kill half the fucking Delphi creators community? You never did a single damn thing about it. Yeah, that's right. Why'd you allow the entire troll farm to threaten to kill Richard Allen multiple times and others? You want to talk about death threats? Why'd you allow the correctional officers at Westville to threaten to kill Richard Allen, his wife, and his daughter and mother-in-law?
And I heard Guy Relford say that day on the radio, and I called him 15 minutes after he said it. And after 40 years in this business, I never thought about the jury's perspective. But he said the only people that mattered in that courtroom was the jury. And he went on to talk about, he's a very bright attorney. He went on to talk about what they can see that we can't, that you couldn't. They could see the defense. They could see the state. They could see the witnesses, feel the emotion, and they could see Richard Allen. I've never thought about that perspective because we have a singular view most times. You, me, it's human nature. Judge Gall was the keeper of the peace in that courtroom, but the people that mattered were those 12 jurors. And we have a system of justice that allows them to decide the fate of a human being. That's what our founders had established.
Don't get all constitutional now, Doug Carter, because look, don't even go there. Don't even go to the founding fathers, motherfucker. No way. No way on earth I'm going to let you not. I'm not going to let that slide.
And that's what they did. I hope you all understand that what you say and how you report matters more than you can ever possibly comprehend.
Oh, why do you think we're doing this now? Because we know our words matter. That's why we get the death threats.
It's an opportunity for us to all learn about what social media is and isn't, what we should do and what we shouldn't, and understand that their words have consequences.
And I will never stop.
To other human beings. I appreciated Guy's perspective, and it changed my view of the criminal proceeding. Richard Allen knew.
How do you know? Richard Allen knew what, Douglas?
We live in a country where people can hate. People can say things about other people. And that's okay. Hate me.
I don't hate you, Doug. I dislike you a lot, but I don't hate you. I hate the killers of Libby and Abby and all those involved in the cover-up.
It's one of the only countries in the world where you can.
No, it's not. There's France, Italy, UK, Norway, Ecuador, fucking Argentina, Guatemala, Canada, Shibby.
So hate me if you want to. The investigative collaboration is something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life. There's no way we could possibly chronicle it or articulate it or write about it or anything.
This is
There's no way we could ever.
Okay, now he shifted Okay, so so now he's gone from pushing the narrative points he wanted to push in admonition and shaming. Now he's moving on to the congratulatory, patting themselves on the back. So this is the self-congratulatory phase of the speech. Okay.
Do that. We are human beings, and there were mistakes made. But there was never a mistake made that we knew was wrong when we did it. I'll crawl
Oh,
across.
oh, that's rich too. That one's, I forgot about that one. Yeah, yeah. There were mistakes made. I mean, we're human beings, but there was never a mistake made when we knew it was wrong at the time that we did it. You can't make this shit up, man. There's like, come on, this guy's good. He's good.
Shards of hot glass for Jerry Holman.
Well, oh fuck, I fucked up. Okay, that's the line I can't miss this one up. Okay, let's start it over.
There's no way we could possibly chronicle it or articulate it or write about it or anything. There's no way we could ever do that. We are human beings, and there were mistakes made. But there was never a mistake made that we knew was wrong when we did it. I'll crawl across shards of hot glass for Jerry Holman. Jerry Holman is not a liar.
How bizarre. How bizarre. What a bizarre thing to do and say. How bizarre is that? What fucking kind of press conference? I should not be talking. Okay. I think like I'm fucking the flow up. I shouldn't be talking because, guys, like, I highly recommend anyone who has not watched this on their own in full and take it in, go do it because I know I'm talking all over it. But how bizarre is this? That he's just all over the place. He's all over the place. Like let's back it up.
But there was never a mistake made that we knew was wrong when we did it. I'll crawl across shards of hot glass for Jerry Holman. Jerry Holman is not a liar.
Really? Is that on your bullet point list of points that you have to touch on before your shit's over? Jerry Holman is not a liar.
Jerry Holman gave the last 8 years of his life.
Remember I said the other day I had a slip of the tongue. I said sharts of hot ass.
To something much greater than himself. We fussed with each other throughout the course of this in conclusion. We argued with each other. I remember Tobe and I had an argument right here in this other room in April of 19, as you should expect us to. There was no groupthink. We debated each other, as you should expect us to. But then the defense spins it into incompetence.
No, you are incompetent and crooked and dirty and colluding. And it was more about who got credit for what. It wasn't about doing it for the benefit of the victims. You guys were arguing about who was going to get credit and be in front of the cameras on that occasion.
It's ridiculous.
You're ridiculous. This entire get up, that uniform you have on is fucking ridiculous at this point. You're ashamed to that uniform. People have died to wear that uniform.
There was no groupthink. We debated each other, as you should expect us to. But then the defense spins it into incompetence. It's ridiculous.
There was
It's
no
ridiculous
spin.
Nonsense.
Let's see, what the defense did is they didn't spin it enough because it was you and all your shills who spun the fuck out of this since 2017. Let's be honest here. You had 8 years of spin.
Baldwin and Razi to have done that. And finally, most importantly, to the Delphi community and to the family of Abby and Libby. Words cannot possibly explain what we all feel.
You're right about that.
But what Nick McClellan did and the rest of the team that was associated with this, every single time it was about something other than themselves. It was about this community and that family. And we owe them a debt of gratitude that can never possibly be repaid.
No, it wasn't. And first of all, everyone's on salary here that you're referring to, even the troll farm. So everyone got paid. Okay, so nothing was done unselfishly, and furthermore, we're about to see him hit ourselves, and I'm going to comment on that. Just let me let it go.
How about we start to heal now? How about
There-
we hit that reset button and
how about how about everyone move on now? Okay, everyone who's looking into this, just let's move on now. We'll call it healing. Okay, remember the objective of conviction or Richard Allen was to make this go away forever. So how about we make it go away forever and move on, and everyone heal. Again, he's probably looked at a bullet point.
understand that justice in this country was served, and if you don't like justice in this country, go do another one.
Nope, that's not the way it works, Douglas. That's not the way it works. Healthy, vigorous debate, freedom of speech, pointed criticism, and uh, holding leaders accountable is what this country is built on. You don't go away when the leaders fuck you over. Okay, you hold them accountable for their misdeeds and wrongdoing and corruption.
Let's heal.
No, there's no healing.
Tone down the rhetoric.
No, there's no
Stop all the
toning down.
politics and all the nonsense and all the conspiracy.
No, Doug, this is not about politics. This is not about toning down the rhetoric. You could have toned down the rhetoric from the very beginning. Shards of hot ass. What glass?
Theories and understand that we all tried the best we could.
Yeah, is that another excuse you're making? Listen to that again. Oh my, he's just it just bleeds. It seethes out of them. You know?
Button and understand that justice in this country was served, and if you don't like justice in this country, go do another one. Let's heal. Tone down the rhetoric. Stop all the politics and all the nonsense and all the conspiracy theories and understand that we all tried the best we could. That should be the message to us and to our kids.
We all tried the best we could. What, to not serve justice to these victims and to cover up the actual murders and to railroad an innocent man?
And to this most amazing place we call the United States of America.
Oh, don't get patriotic now, bud.
Well done. Thank you all.
Good morning.
Just when you thought it couldn't get any douchier.
Can we all just have a little bit of a sigh of relief that this thing is over finally?
Now, you want to talk about a douche?
The convictions come in. We've got the verdict. We got the sentence, 130 years in the Department of Corrections. And while I don't think ever this verdict or this conviction will ever bring peace to the family, I hope that they can take this sigh of relief with me to say that this part of the trial is over, that we got the conviction, that we got the sentence that brings justice for Abby and Libby.
No. How does this bring justice when this was an entire fucking circus and still is?
A few of the things I am going to say are going to echo what Sheriff Liggett said, what Superintendent Carter said, and what Mike Patty said. But I'd be remiss if I didn't thank some people along the way. Law enforcement, Carroll County Sheriff's Department, Indiana State Police, Department of Natural Resources, all the agencies that assisted in this investigation and the prosecution of the defendant, I want to thank. They were attacked by members on the internet for their integrity. They were called corrupt. They were called evil.
They are corrupt.
And
They
were
are
called
evil.
liars. And they weathered that storm with professionalism and did what they could to be a shield for the families. Spent countless hours chasing down leaks of crime scene photos, countless hours attempting to scrub the internet of those crime scene photos.
Hey, buddy, I notice you're leaving some names out, like all of the prosecution shills who were the leakers of those crime scene photos. It's odd that you're leaving that out. I think I got to back this up a bit because I'm letting too much pass, okay? Because I'm getting exhausted. Let's see.
On the internet for their integrity. They were called corrupt.
Because they are.
They were called evil.
Because they are.
And they were called liars.
Because they are liars. You all are.
And they weathered that storm with professionalism.
No one cares.
And did what they could to be a shield for the families.
No one cares.
Spent countless hours chasing down leaks of crime.
People acting on your behalf were responsible for those leaks.
Crime scene photos. Countless hours attempting to scrub the internet of those crime scene photos.
Again, should I call their names? Should I call their names since you're denying that it was your people who leaked and then spread those crime scene photos? You think we don't know?
And countless hours trying to protect the family as best as they could. And so to them, ISP, Carroll County Sheriff's Department, DNR, the other agencies that assisted, thank you. We would not be here today if it were not for your efforts and your countless hours that you sacrificed away from your family and your friends to give us the evidence that we needed to get the conviction.
The conviction, not a conviction. Did you notice that? The conviction, not a conviction.
I want to thank my team, Stacy Diener, James Luttrell. There is no way
He left off all the entire troll farm.
I could have tried this case without them. We spent countless hours working on this case, away from our families, away from our friends, and no one will understand the heart and the effort that they poured into this. So thank you. I want to thank Kathy Shank. She kept us.
Investigator Kathy Shank, not little old lady. Okay, let's not be stupid here.
Well fed. She was the grandmother of our office, if you will.
No, she's no little old lady. Look at this duping delight here. Look at the duping delight. Look at that face.
She made sure that whatever we needed, she took care of, and she never complained. And without her, we would not be here. Without her countless hours of going over filings, of scanning in documents, of looking at reports, and having the wherewithal to bring this to the attention of Sheriff Liggett, to say, hey, I haven't seen this before. Has anybody followed up with this person? Without her, we would not be here. Without her, we would not have an arrest, a conviction, and a sentence. She was the key part to this investigation. The needle in the haystack, if you will, that brought this investigation to a close to where we could make an arrest. Kathy Shank, I thank you. And finally, the family. The Williams, the Germans, the Patties. Thank all you guys. The support you gave me throughout this. Those times when I said you had to abide by the gag order, that you wanted to respond to the things that were being put out there, the allegations against you, against your family members.
Because they're all so damn sensitive of the things said on the internet. God! I've never seen a group of so-called professionals so fucking sensitive about the things that random people are saying on the internet.
That you respected me to the point where you were willing to agree to abide by that gag order for the betterment of the case. The fact that you supported me throughout it, and I know there may be times you doubted, but you endured. And without your help, we wouldn't have got the conviction. And without your victim impact statements.
The conviction again. Look at this duping delight. Look at the duping delight.
And the graceful words that you gave to the court about how this has influenced your lives, we wouldn't have got the sentence that we got. 130 years, maximum sentence on each count.
Wrongful
And
conviction.
so I thank you. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Abby and Libby themselves.
No, okay, that be a bullshit. How dare you? How dare you? This is the most disgraceful display.
Libby, for recording the defendant as he walked across the bridge, having the wherewithal to pull out her phone and record that individual, having the wherewithal to know that something wasn't right. Arguably the biggest piece of evidence that we had, that recording of their killer. And then to Abby for hiding the phone.
I'm gonna vomit. I'm gonna vomit. I'm gonna vomit. This is what I was referencing last night. The fantasizing or the fictionalization of the moments of their death. The fictionalization of the moments of their death. How disgusting is that?
Hiding the phone from the killer so that he couldn't take it with him. Hiding the phone so that law enforcement could find it and get that piece of evidence that Libby had collected. Without the efforts from those two little girls, we wouldn't be here today. So Abby and Libby, thank you.
Fucking disgusting. Fucking disgusting.
I want to say we're very happy with the jury's verdict.
Of course you are.
We're elated with the judge's ruling, or not the judge's ruling, the judge's sentence. The sentence is appropriate. As Judge Gall stated in court, the aggravators outweighed the mitigators, and the heinous nature of this crime deserve a fully executed sentence. I'll end with this. I want to thank the media for keeping this case in the forefront, for keeping the tips coming in for us to investigate. But I will leave you this word of caution. Please, as Superintendent Carter said, the crime scene photos are still out there.
Super concerned about the sticks on the bodies and the posing of the bodies. Like, let's be clear here. They are super fucking concerned about the stick figurations on the bodies and the posing.
And more may be out there in the future. Please, if you receive those, delete those. Don't forward those on. Don't re-victimize the family and the other family members.
World's smallest
You
violin.
can write whatever story you want and report however you want. You do not need those crime scene photos to do so. All it does is re-victimize the families and
No, it
hurt the
doesn't.
reputation of Abby and Libby.
No, it doesn't. No, it does not. It honors the victims by showing the truth in how they were left in those woods that you all have tried to misrelay.
So please, if you get those, do not forward those on. If you get any other crime scene photos or autopsy photos or anything, don't forward those on. As Superintendent Carter said, imagine if they were your kids, your grandkids.
It's not about the kids, it's about the sticks.
You can write a story without having those pieces.
It's about the
part of
posing of the bodies.
So please, do not forward those on.
You don't want the world to see the truth, how they were left in those woods.
I want to thank the community finally. Everybody in the community locally has supported my office, supported law enforcement.
And has made hundreds of thousands of dollars every year off of this.
The show of support from them has been just unforgettable. I appreciate everything everyone's done. I appreciate the prayers. I appreciate the handshakes, the support, everything that everybody's done throughout this course of the 8-year investigation. When this investigation started, I was actually a defense attorney.
No one gives a fuck.
I ran for the prosecutor's office in January 1st of 2018, and I knew coming into that office that this case was one that I would have to investigate.
Of course you did. That's why you were put there. Okay. And we know about your relationship with Ron Logan. I mean, that's been thoroughly discussed by the community with people like us. Do you think that we don't understand the relationship with Ron Logan?
I made it one of my goals not only to investigate it, but to get an arrest, have the trial, and get a conviction. And all the support I had throughout that time, I appreciate it. And so, as Trooper Pierce said, I'm going to answer a few questions. The gag order is lifted. You're more than welcome to talk to anybody up here individually afterwards if they want to talk to you. But I will take a few questions here and now.
What did you do to help the family navigate the emotions of the swirling narrative outside of the gag order and also the hate and vitriol put onto these kids?
It's not easy. It's hard to put yourself in their shoes because I've never had a child die.
No one gives a fuck what you have to say, douche. As a matter of fact, we're done with that. I can't take another moment of his douching. But so I wanted to start off in this way tonight because I wanted you to witness for yourselves the brazen gall of these people. The like I said, this is the absolute worst display of insanity by the Indiana State Police in its entire 92-year history. Bottom line, I've never seen anything look as disgusting as that particular press conference. I remember watching it in real time. I was just floored. Uh, remember what happened. You know, everyone who got up just had a whole litany of bullshit in the points they wanted to make. And Doug Carter especially was extremely defensive. Um, just horrible. Horrible. Anyway, let's see. Okay. But there were some things I wanted to cover. Okay, so let's see. So, let's see. We're going to do a screen share now. Let me get it together. Moving on to our next segment here. Let's see. All right, let's see. This says we're going to discuss a few things. Okay, so in reviewing what I did today is I reviewed this thing in its entirety in regards to Richard Allen, you know, since his arrest until now. I reviewed the whole thing and I wanted to talk about some of the main points, okay? For instance, these are some of the considerations. Due to the incompetent investigation or potential destruction of evidence, okay, this is what we know. There's no testable DNA at the crime scene, unbelievably, right? There are no viable fingerprints at the crime scene, unbelievably. No suspect, not one, I'm sorry, not suspect, witness, no witness, not even one, positively identified Richard Allen at the trails or at the crime scene or as Bridge Guy. Some even testified that the Bridge Guy was approximately 8 to 10 inches taller than Richard Allen is. The ages don't match. No murder weapon has ever been found or recovered. Not a single weapon. And it is believed that possibly more than one weapon may have been used on the girls. No weapon recovered. During the 5 years it took for them to go and arrest Richard Allen, multiple people had confessed to the crime. Okay? Multiple people had reported that their loved ones potentially had committed the crime. Remember, Brad Weber provided several inconsistent statements about his whereabouts and activity on February 14th, 2017. We had Stacey Eldridge come and say that Libby's headphone jack was indeed physically interacted with on February 13 at 5:45 or so p.m. and at 10:30 or so p.m., which is far after this fictional bridge guy scenario would have been over with. So who was there manipulating the Libby cell phone between 5 p.m. and 11 p.m.? And what do they say? Okay, so what do they say? What do these troll farms and the guilters and the state actors, what do they say that makes Richard Allen guilty? Let's go through a few of the points. Richard Allen admitted he was on the trails that day. He admitted he was on the trails that day. Yeah. Yeah, surely he did admit that he was there earlier the day. And shit, as far as we know, there's like 8 to 10 people or more. In other words, there are handfuls of people there that day. All of those who are known to be there that day have admitted that they were there. So Richard Allen is one among a dozen who have admitted being there that day. What's another thing they say about Richard Allen? Richard Allen says he doesn't see any other man on the bridge. And this is what the troll farm will say. He admitted being there, and he didn't see anyone else there. Here's another thing they say. Richard Allen told police he was wearing a blue or black jacket. That's what Bridge Guy was wearing. And when they searched his house, they found a blue Carhartt jacket, and that matches Bridge Guy's jacket. No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because Bridge Guy doesn't have a Carhartt jacket on. Okay, why? Carhartt jackets have a little emblem on them that's very visible. Additionally, Richard Allen's jacket was purchased after 2017. The jacket showed no signs of bloodstain, DNA, anything else. Just like his vehicle showed no signs of bloodstain, DNA, anything else. How in the world can you explain that if he's muddy and bloody, covered from head to toe in mud and blood? And listen, everyone knows that crime scene was bloody. Anybody that was a lone wolf killer killing those girls with a bladed weapon like that would have gotten covered in blood. Where's the blood? Where's the blood on his clothing, his shoes, his pants, his jacket? Richard, when they served the search warrant, Richard Allen had like 20 cell phones. The only phone they couldn't find was the one he had during that time. Do you know that to be true? How many phones do you have? I know this. Most people never throw away phones, right? How often have you thrown away your phones? Then they'll say Richard Allen voluntarily went to the police to cover his trail. Then they'll say Richard Allen lied to his wife about if he was on the trails that day. And they'll say it's Richard Allen's voice on the bridge guy video, and we know that because Sergeant Harshman, Brian Harshman, listened to hundreds of hours of his phone calls, and he knows it's his voice. What's another thing they tried? Richard Allen changed his height and weight on his fishing license after the murders. And what did Jerry Holman say? He said, Richard Allen said, it doesn't matter. It's all over when we were serving the search warrant at his house. They say Richard Allen knew facts only the killer would know. Okay, what are those facts? White van. There's a white van. Well, let's see. That came about in what, 2022, 23, 24? And if we go back onto the internet, which is a thing that exists that is freely available to anyone, including Monica Walla, who extracted this particular detail allegedly, you go back and you find this thread of white van. As a matter of fact, if you go all the way back to the helicopter footage on the very day those bodies were allegedly found, you see the white van that belongs to Brad Weber in the helicopter footage. And what else will they say? He knew that their throats were slit. He knew that their throats were slit by a knife or box cutter. And he worked at CVS, so he had access to box cutters. And remember, some of them, they even when the photos came out of the various knives at his house, like any Midwestern man is going to have knives in his house, they said he owned knives. But what they leave out is that he also said that he had an affair with a cigarette, and he's sorry he shot the girls, right, with a gun. Were the girls shot? And then they'll say, his vehicle is on camera at the harvest store. Really? Can you confirm that is his vehicle? I don't think you can. I don't see how there's a way to confirm that's his vehicle on the camera. Additionally, can you confirm that it's Kelsey's vehicle on the camera? No, I don't think you can. Remember, you allowed all the witnesses to self-verify their own vehicles on the camera. And then somehow you inadvertently leave out, accidentally, right, the other vehicle on the camera that has since surfaced. In other words, that's been leaked by the Mean Girls. And then they say, the bullet at the crime scene matches Richard Allen's gun, and he had one in a keepsake box. Well, oddly enough, what they leave out is that it's complete trash ballistics that matches that round to his gun. Okay. They leave that one out. And they also leave out the fact that other guns could not be excluded from producing those ejection marks on that shell casing. They also leave out the fact that that round had to be fired to produce supposed matching marks. And in regards to the bullet in the keepsake box, what they never will admit is there's a potential that that is a planted piece of evidence. Okay? So is the bullet at the crime scene planted? Well, hey, we don't know, right? We don't know about that one. But we know this 40 caliber at the time, 2017 and prior, was the preferred law enforcement round, right? We know that an IMPD officer told Julie Melvin that they found all kind of 40 caliber empty shell casings out there. We know Brad Weber owned an identical 40 caliber SIG. We also know that if I've made the point before, if you think about it, can you plant a microwave in somebody's house? No, it's not very easy, is it? Can you plant a laptop computer in somebody's house? Well, it's not very easy, is it? Can you plant a cell phone in somebody's house? Somewhat easier. Oh, can you plant like something this size in someone's house? The size of a bullet? Oh, very. Yep, dropped it. You can just wedge the bullet in between your fingers and have your hands in your pockets and walk around, and you could even use an ink pen and still have that bullet in between the fingers, and you could easily just go and drop that bullet right on into Richard Allen's keepsake box so that you have a match to the one at the crime scene. So that's no evidence, right? That's no evidence. The bullet in the keepsake box, throw it away. What else do they say? Let's see. So what they say is he went to Doolin and said he was there at the same time the girls were there. And Doolin always recorded the interactions. But no, we don't have the handwritten notes and we don't have a recording, but just take our word for it. The time that he said he was there was the same time the girls were there. Okay. Whew. Then they say, then you'll say, well, what happened to that tip all these years? Oh, well, it was Kathy Shank. She just magically, one day she's cleaning out a desk drawer and she magically finds the tip. And she looks at it and she says, this must be important. I'll bring it to Liggett. Thereby solving the case. And then finally, they'll say, well, he confessed, leaving out the entire predicate, which is that he confessed after being in solitary confinement exponentially beyond the Geneva Convention recommendations, while being force medicated above his body weight with Haldol, while being sextorted or coerced by a female psychologist who was using her sexuality in her interactions with them while feeding him details because she just so happened to be a die-hard fan of the Delphi Murders YouTube community and in multiple Facebook discussion groups. While he's being threatened by Odinist, Norse, pagan prison guards wearing Odinist patches, threatening to kill, according to Robert Baston, him and his family all day long. So that's the case against Richard Allen. Here's what they do then. Then you say, so what's the evidence that he did it? And they'll say, well, there's no piece of evidence that says he did it, that said that he did it, but it's the what's the term they use? What's the term they use? They say it's the my mind my mind is it's just every bit of this is so bewildering that I can't even they say like it's the totality of uh jeez they say it's the totality of circumstantial evidence that says it's him. You just cannot make the shit up, right? You can't make it up. Now, then you go a step beyond and you say, well, with all of that being considered, there's still this nagging thing that a jury somehow was led to believe that they had reached this threshold of beyond a reasonable doubt, as if they had no idea or had not been instructed in what the standard of reasonable doubt to get beyond was. And then the thing they'll gloss over is that the entire contingent who were the power players behind all of this are all fucking Freemasons in Indiana. Oh, they leave that one out real quick. They'll also leave out the fact that there were at least 30 to 45 individuals operating on the internet on their behalf, terrorizing the community. They ran YouTube channels. They regularly consulted with the family. They regularly consulted with Nicholas McClellan himself. They regularly consulted with Jerry Holman. They regularly consulted with Brian Harshman. These are the very people who have tried for years to run us off of the internet, terrorized us, threatened our families, threatened our well-being, affected our mental health, sent shit to our post office boxes, contacted our police and sent the police to our homes. This is the Delphi murder scenario. And Nicholas McClellan, Tony Liggett, Kathy Shank, and Doug Carter had the fucking nerve to get up at that press conference and show their faces and say the same things that they said. Like, it's enough of this. It's time to move on. It's time for healing. Jerry Holman is not a liar. I'd walk over hot shards of glass for him. Don't share the crime scene photos. Everything that you just saw, and on and on and on. Re-victimizing the families. Abby had the insight or the foresight to hide the phone under her body as she's dying. And like a chatter says, they promote Judge Gull during the course of this, right? They promote Jerry Holman during the course of this. They try their best to pull the rug out from under Richard Allen's defense in multiple ways, by setting them up for crime scene photo leaks, by sending the controlled opposition in there to sabotage the defense strategy, by leaking, by trying to have them arrested. And remember, when Gall failed the first time in doing it with the forced resignation type of deal or forced withdrawal, McClellan tried a second time to find them in contempt. And I said before, there's only one fucking person who stopped that in its tracks at that contempt hearing, and that was because Judge Gull's own employee had been leaking and discussing with Fig Sauls. And no one's supposed to see any of this, and no one's supposed to be upset about any of this, and no one's supposed to be astonished by this blatant display of corruption in our faces. Everyone's just supposed to accept it and move on. And this is supposed to be justice for those two girls? Somebody make it make sense. In the meantime, you got Greg Ferency's head blown off over in Terre Haute. You got a bunch of other YouTubers mysteriously die. You got Stephanie Thompson burned up in her home. These people have destroyed lives. It's state sanctioned terrorism. Let's call it what it is. State sanctioned terrorism. Where's the FBI? Where's Homeland Security? Where are the feds? Where's internal review? Do you know the percentage of law enforcement who are practicing Odinists? Do you know the percentage of Freemasons who are practicing occultists or thelemics? Oh, but we let the left hand wash the right hand clean in Indiana. Yeah. Keep it in the family, Prof. And what they allow these people to do, like Sarah Elrose Osbrook, which I wish all of you would go to my Substack. Okay, all of you need to go subscribe to my Substack. Pardon me, I lost my sock. I'm in my socks. The sock been rubbing my feet. My sock slipped off. They allow Sarah Elrod Osbrook, whose husband is a lifelong correctional officer in the state of Illinois, right? Kathy Shank. Jeez, she's another one. Sarah Elrod Osbrook herself, a lifelong paramedic, child's advocate, court appointed, 911 dispatcher, law enforcement adjacent as fuck. But they allow these type of people to go out and literally try to coerce Richard Allen into taking the plea deal. Remember that? Because this whole deal about Kathy doesn't consider herself married. Kathy doesn't believe in Rick's innocence. She believes the confessions. Kathy's only there for the mother-in-law. Uh, all of that bullshit. Well, the troll farm leaked why that occurred. Okay. And the reason that occurred is they were trying to get that back to Rick Allen, get those talking points back to Rick Allen, to get in Rick Allen's head in his compromised state so that he would be compelled to take the plea deal because he would feel that even his own wife and mother don't believe in him anymore. Remember, the objective all along was a plea deal. They never wanted this shit to go to trial because of this very reason that we'd be able to critique it in the way that we can. And they act like everyone online who has a problem with this is the problem. I mean, look at fucking Gray Hughes. But speaking of the trial, look, I wanted to get to two things, okay? Because these things are alarming. Hey, I want a special shout out and thank you to Jake Brooks. Thank you, Jake Brooks, for supporting. Thank you. And everyone in the chat, listen, please hit the like. Please hit the like. And please enjoy the chat. And I apologize. I'm kind of on a rant tonight. I didn't intend to go onto this rant, but you know, that press conference triggers me. It triggers me. It's literally the ugliest display of blatant corruption that I've ever seen in my life. The way that they came out, they immediately came out, they blamed the public, they blamed the YouTubers, and they blamed the defense for everything that they say that is bad that has happened. So I wanted to pull this up. Okay, sorry, I needed a drink of water. This is a lot of reading here. Okay. Let's see. I wanted you to look at some portions of this. Now remember, here right here, this right here is as the testimony at trial of Pat Cicero. Okay, because I'm really upset about this part, and you guys know that. You guys who know me know that I'm really upset about Cicero because the crime scene upsets me, and his misrepresentation of the facts of the crime scene absolutely upset me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over this, but there's some things that I want you to put some pins in. Okay, excuse me. There's some things that need to be pinned here in your mind. Okay. Firstly, now I've already told you, you know how it is with these cops. When the cops get on the stand, the first thing they do is they lay out the entire fucking resume to try to build up this edifice of integrity and believability, respectability. And this is obviously what happens with every single cop that takes the stand. Okay. So they come on here and they try to give him the credibility by doing his whole fucking, this is why you need to believe me. But the things I would like you to pay attention to are because listen, I got to say this before we start. We very well are becoming very familiar with where the corruption exists most in Indiana. Okay. Where these what's the word? I don't know, these hot spots of corruption in Indiana. But check this out. LaPorte County, hot spot of corruption in Indiana. LaPorte County. Check him out. right? LaPorte County for over 24 years. Oh, what are the odds? What are the odds? Okay. And he says before that, Bloomington. Well, guess what, guys? Bloomington, another hotspot of corruption in Indiana. Bloomington. Bloomington and LaPorte County. I mean, you can't even make this shit up. I'm telling you. Bloomington and LaPorte. Can't make this shit up. And then he goes into how he's such a fucking expert in bloodstain analysis. So he goes on and on and on about how he's an expert in this shit. Expert, right? He's going through it. Numerous training, okay? Numerous training. Blood stain analysis, blah, 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 blah. Right? I'm so good at this. Just resume, forensic academy, da, 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 da. I taught lectures. I teach. Forensic entomology for crime scene investigator. Teach. I'm respectable. I'm believable. Believe everything I say. Anyway, we'll go on and on and on, okay? So let's move here. We'll move through all of this. And he does the whole teaching shtick where he attempts to, there's this real cursory teaching moment in regards to trying to instruct the jury or teach the jury the absolute basics about what these words mean when it comes to the words he will be using, okay? How blood works and all this. So let's continue because I want to get to this part here. Oh, National Forensic Academy, da 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 da. Now, there are some interesting things I want to bring up about Cicero because this is where it gets important, okay? So this is how he did this, right? Photographs, okay? Photographs. Okay, you see? Photographs. He's looking at photographs. Now, he's describing where the bodies lay in relation to each other and to the trees. But hey, we know from Dr. Perlmutter, let me remove this for a minute just to clear your minds again. Remember what Dr. Perlmutter said because she's excellent. Where they were, which is only really apparent from the aerial photos, where they were was in a circular clearing of trees, which is absolutely evident from the aerial photos. Okay? That's very important when you're studying the occult or ritualistic angle of the scene. Because remember what I said, the sticks on the bodies are indicative of occult symbology. The figuration on the tree is indicative of occult symbology. The sticks on the pool of blood is indicative of occult symbology. The clearing in the trees near water that's termed Deer Creek is next to a cemetery is all indicative of occult practice. And there are other aspects that have not really been revealed publicly yet that potentially tie into occult symbology. In addition, the posing of the bodies is indicative of occult posing or posturing. But beyond that, let's get back to this garbage. Okay. So he says, I'm showing what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 286. Close up of the tree. Close up of a blood stain upon the tree. Utilizing the scale, it measures approximately 1.37 inches across and 5.9 inches from top to bottom. And someone asked that recently in my chat. So I want that to be out here in your ears right now in case you were the person asking about the measurements. I believe I said 2 inches by 6. which is approximate, but it's actually 1.37 by 5.9. Okay. And he goes into how saying um, they're designating this shape an upside down L. Okay. And I want to get into his whole description of how he's now going to say that this this was farmed. Okay. And he also says he uses the crystal violet to highlight where the blood is after the photographs were taken. Okay. And he said the hypothesis was developed that the horizontal part of the upside down L was very squared, and it was something we don't normally see with just a transfer. Yeah, you know why? Because it's not just a transfer. It's not just a transfer. So he's already admitting himself here in line 15 and 16 here that you don't see squared shapes in transfer, meaning you don't see right angles. I use the words right angles. Okay. He said, uh, he said, this is a pattern transfer. And he says we have a object that would leave a pattern. Okay. And he goes into here and he says, uh, he's saying for context here, this is line 13. Here is the small tree with the upside down L. So between the tree and where the decedents are laying, when I originally viewed these photographs, I thought was possibly either another blood stain that was observed, whether it be multiple drips or a small accumulation. And I thought it was my understanding that 3 was possibly a larger pooling of blood. 4 may represent that pool of blood. 3 may be something of a different nature, but they're identifying something that they observed there. I was not quite sure when I observed it. You know, that there's the largest pool collection of blood at the scene in this photograph. This dark location here is what's referred to as a pool of blood, and it was in the process of coagulation. What coagulation is when we have a pool of blood with its clotting factors will retract into gelatinous mass. We'll see separation of serum as a result of that contraction of blood, which it could be consistent with the separation of plasma that would be more likely to soak into the ground, meaning the blood thickens. Okay. He says, I want to point out that the blood stains that were under Liberty's right leg uh, and there's blood that coagulates and extends outwards towards Liberty German that was not part of the coagulant or pooling. Okay. So the coagulant or the gelatinous mass of blood is here. And as we go farther towards Liberty, you can see that these leaves are stained. This stick is stained, and it continues. This is Liberty's right leg. Here's the bottom of her foot. It's not in focus, but there's a blood stain on the bottom of her foot. And there's a gelatinous mass and blood stains. The blood stains on the leaves leading to her location. Okay, no problem with any of that. It tells me she was moving and bleeding. That's what I interpret. And he says on the lower torso and the torso are numerous blood stains consistent with a flow pattern. A flow pattern is a volume of blood. Due to gravity, the blood will flow downwards based upon gravity. The stains that are marred are referred to as altered stains, meaning that it goes through the flow patterns and creates what appears to be transfer stains. So this is a complex pattern in the fact that they're overlapping and flows had occurred. you can see that at some point, the best explanation for the appearance of the flow is that Liberty was upright, which means, yeah, to me, she was bleeding as she was upright. You can also see with the flows that they've changed direction, going downwards. And you can see subsequent alterations or transfer through the flow patterns around her neck and upper chest. And there are numerous blood stains consistent with alterations and transfer, as if something was coming to contact with the area. On Liberty's face were numerous flow patterns extending to her face, moving downward. Appears to be going downward to her right side of her face. You can see a flow pattern that goes up over her cheek and down towards the bottom of her face. A flow pattern observed going from the right eye downward to the ear, and on the hand we observe a voluminous amount of blood on the hands. Okay, so here's something that's not being well explained. In other words, there's some sort of pattern, right? In other words, it's not just going down and it's not just going up. There's a literal patterning on the cheek. Okay. Furthermore, in the cuticles, there's a significant amount of blood coagulated and blood on the hands, transfer stains on the wrist and forearm, and he says there's dilution in the flow patterns, meaning that there's some type of moisture mixed with the blood. And this is where the absolute gaslight starts. Remember what I'm saying is that they're promulgating a narrative here. Okay, the narrative is to play on the emotions of the jury. He hypothesizes that there may be a tear. Okay. And he says that this is Liberty's right thigh. Okay, number 14, line number 14. This consists of blood stains, drips of blood with subsequent flows. The top of the right thigh. This pattern is consistent with what's referred to as projected pattern. Projected pattern is a volume of blood which is ejected out of a breach from one of the vessels, the blood spraying, okay? Positioning of such is that the flow pattern's going downward, gravity will take over, right? That the leg would have had to been somewhat underneath the injury for the blood to project out of the wound, which makes sense if she's upright, and down to the leg. Okay, so some of that is making sense. And then he says the best explanation of this particular pattern they're discussing would be if she would have been seated at one point for the wound to be somewhat over the leg and come straight down, and then to flow while the blood was still wet. And of course, she could have been standing, okay, which is why I believe she was walking around and bleeding, possibly. Now he says, just to reinforce the fact of the projected pattern, we see individual drops and what's referred to as these scallops showing energy. And this would be called hydrostatic pressure, meaning the cardiovascular system is pumping out blood, means it's ejecting in a large amount, hitting the leg. Okay. Then he says that there's blood and transfer stains referred to as a wipe, where the blood is exiting and something wipes through it, like she could have touched or someone could have touched and smeared the blood. And he says, did you find any altered blood patterns? Yes, consistent with the legs, with the projected patterns, where especially going into the interior portion of the leg, there's alterations, as well as a torso where something wiped or swiped through the blood. So it's in an altered state. So extending from the eye down to the ear, as we can see, it gets lighter and lighter and still maintaining on the peripheral of the stain a darker appearance. This is textbook consistent with dilution. It gives the appearance that she's bleeding from the nose, but we know from post-mortem or autopsy that she did not have injuries to the nose. What would have happened is the blood being fluid takes the path of least resistance. Gravity would have occurred where her head would have had to been lower than where the blood source was located. Okay. And there, to me, is an absolute humongous red flag. Okay? And what he begins to describe is that there's blood flow that's occurring that's from down to up, meaning the head would have had to been below the elevation of the neck. Do you believe Liberty was moved after she died or after she was unconscious? Yes. And the movement would have resulted in this pattern? Yes, it could have. This is the photograph of before she's moved or her body is being moved, but before she's moved from her location. What did you find significant? Okay, along the leg, there's blood staining. There's blood staining on the leg. And this is the right leg. We observed, I've noted blood on the side underneath the interface between the ground and the leg. And along the backside, what we also see, because of the adhesive nature of blood, the leaves are sticking to the blood. Okay, and after Liberty has been moved, did you find anything significant? Yes, it was just a little bit of blood on the leaves where she was discovered. This would indicate that she's no longer bleeding, because if she was still alive and bleeding, we'd expect to see a pooling. Okay, so what did you find significant? There was, according to DNA reports and crime scene photos, this is the only area of blood for Abby. You can see that there's what appears to be a small pooling to the right of her right arm and shoulder. The injury to Abby is on the left side of the neck. And so I'll believe we'll see better photographs of the area underneath and the dark hoodie. And did you examine a multitude of photographs of the sweatshirt while it was on her body? Yes. What did you notice? I noticed, contrary to what we've observed with Liberty, there was no blood stains on Abby's hands. Likewise, many different photos of Abby at the crime scene in different views, different angles, different lighting. I could not observe any blood stains that were on the sleeves or the arms of Abby, which tells me immediately she was not alive in that sweater, reaching for the wound. Okay. And I truly do believe there's no way this has happened the way they have said. Imagine if Liberty is at some point, her head is below the rest of her body, that's immediately, okay, a red flag. Something's going on. With Abby, she's not reaching for that wound. Something's going on. Okay. Now, I'm going to keep going on because I want to get to the tree now. But he is talking about the blood flow. Again, this is on page 43 here. He's still talking about the blood going upwards. Okay, the blood's going upwards. Again, something's wrong here. And as Jake Brooks is saying here, no defensive wounds at all. No defensive wounds on either girl whatsoever at all. Okay. Now he's continuing. He's saying, in order for these blood stains, line 23, to have occurred and the appearance of these flow patterns, it appears as though Abby's head would have had to gone back, or the blood source would have had to been above in order to create the flow. So whoa. What are you telling me? Are you telling me that both these girls had blood patterns going this direction? Meaning at some point, their bodies were in such a position that the blood was flowing upside down? And he says, based upon blood evidence and context, the bloodletting occurred somewhere else, basically. Okay, somewhere else. He doesn't say where, because remember, what I've assumed is there's a secondary crime scene where the blood flowing occurs. Okay. And we've always known, remember, even from Robert Ives' days, we've always known that the bodies were moved and staged. Not just moved and not just staged. Now, tell me this. Where in Nicholas McClelland's fictional storyline do the girls get moved and then staged? If Liberty is killed where she is, and if Abby is killed where she is and she's literally hiding, so she has time to hide the phone but somehow not grab the wound that's causing her death, and somehow manages to get upside down at some point. It just is absolutely illogical. Okay, there's zero logic to this entire scenario that McClelland's putting across. But blood would have been almost instantaneous, and in a normal reaction, the victim or decedent would just put their hands into the area where the blood loss occurred, which obviously on both girls would be the neck. It's a normal reaction. Okay? Staining your hands, but we know Abby's got no stains, not even on the sweater. Now, on Abby's hands, she's got the stains, but again, she's got this weird blood flow patterning. Where do you believe Liberty would have been when she was injured or wounded, and where she moved from to that point when she was found? She would have been injured initially in the vicinity of the pool of blood, is what he speculates. And like I said, it's my opinion that the pattern on the leaves and on her bottom of her foot suggests that she was moving. I truly do believe Liberty was alive at the crime scene and was injured at the crime scene and did move and then was further staged. Okay, but not Abby. Okay, I actually don't believe that Abby was alive at all at that crime scene. I mean, my amateur, unprofessional, Indiana State Police opinion, Abby was not alive at that crime scene. I just can't see it. Okay. He says, these subsequent blood stains that you see between the pooling and her body was the result of Liberty most likely being dragged to that location and transferring the blood. Well, where's the blood on Richard Allen's jacket then? Where's the blood on Richard Allen himself? Where's the blood in the vehicle? Now I want to get to, let's see. Same question about Abby. Where you believe she was when she was injured and where she was moved to until she succumbed. Based upon the lack of blood evidence anywhere else, it's the best explanation is that she succumbed at this location where she's observed. Yeah, but where's the blood? Where are the defensive wounds? Anything unusual about the lack of blood on the hands of Abby? It's very unusual, he admits on 22, not to have any blood on the hands. In this case, also the sleeves, which were over the hands. There's no information or evidence to show that she died immediately. This would have taken some time. How many times have you seen in cases where there's been a serious neck injury where there's no blood on the victim's hands? I've never seen it. Line number 2. Not from an artery like that or that massive blood loss wound. They would have always had some type of transfer stains to the hands or clothing. In Abby's case, was it a vein? Yes, it was a jugular vein. What would be the explanation as to why there's no blood? Can you discern on the sleeves and the cuffs no blood on the hands of Abby? There could be multiple explanations. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Such as she was bound. Okay, number 9, like I said, where are the appellate attorneys in this? Are you guys working on this? She was bound, but there's no evidence of that. Pathology would be one to tell us if she's potentially unconscious or restrained. And you see what the judge does? You get what the judge does at this moment, Judge Gull? She stops this shit in its goddamn tracks. Line number 12. Will counsel approach, please? And then she blames it on the jury. We're having jurors that have having some difficulty with, you know, look, Judge Gold put the kibosh on this. She stopped it in its tracks. She didn't like this because this was not making sense. You see, he was becoming a defense witness right here. He was becoming a defense expert. She couldn't have that. Okay. But of course, we're in fantasy world here, so. Question, Major Cicero, with regard to Abby, did you consider whether she was whether the garments on her body were placed on her body after death? Yes, I was asked to do so. And now we're dealing with upper clothing, which we know was a black bra, the gray bra, the pink top, and the sweatshirt. What's your opinion about whether she was wearing those items at the time she was killed? It's my opinion, based upon my review of the clothing, that she was wearing this at the time she was killed. Why do you conclude that? And then he goes into saying that there was saturation on the inner portion of the sweatshirt. And he says if she was completely naked, we'd expect to see blood transfer and smearing. So see, something's not adding up here. And how do they just a bulldog through this or whatever, you know, how do they plow through this and allow it? There's some more speculation, blah, 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 blah. Do you have an opinion as to the minimum number of individuals, line number 10, required to kill Abby and Libby? Objection, Your Honor. This is completely outside of Cicero's area of expertise. Huh. But then he says, at least one person. Well, no fucking shit, Sherlock. At least one person has to kill somebody who's killed. At least one person. Yeah, no shit. But see, that was what Luttrell was looking for. I guarantee you he was coached to give that exact phraseology. At least one person. If there's no evidence they're bound, wouldn't that indicate that there has to at least be two persons? One to restrain and one to injure? But Luttrell got what he wanted, okay? At least one. All right. Now they're going to get into the blood stain on the tree. He says, she was moved to the area where she was located. Question, are you aware of Liberty German's weight? I was. I don't know it right now. I remember her height, but not her weight. Okay, 200 pounds? If that's what the report says, I would agree. Okay, I'm going to show you what was previously marked as Exhibit 36. Is it your testimony that Liberty was drugged from here to here? I believe you'd have to go lower. Are you talking about her foot? Her head is her body. Okay, there are a lot of leaves between the blood pool and her feet. There are no marks on the leaves to indicate she was drugged, correct? Well, yes, there's still leaves there, but there's also leaves on her body. Yes. Now, you said several of the flow patterns on her face were not consistent with her final resting spot, correct? Do you mean that at some point her neck was above her chin? Yes. Her head would have been back at some point based upon the prints of the flow patterns. So her torso, her neck was above her face. I would agree, yes. So someone lifted her body to create that. In other words, someone lifted her body above her head. And he's also indicating that she's not really dragged. So, in other words, she's carried upside down? And Richard Allen did that by himself and didn't leave a single defensive wound. And somehow he's Hercules. And they continue, but he says, I don't know if she was lifted or not, but yes, her positioning would have had to been her neck or her chin was lower than the actual injury, which was here. So she's upside down. There's no other way to say that. But of course, he gives the caveat, but the bodies can articulate in so many ways, it's hard to tell. Now, when you do diagrams, such as Exhibit 20, it's important to document important markings. Yes. And there are no marks, no indication that indicates drag marks. I agree. You testified that Liberty's body was moved to the other side of the tree, and that made it difficult to see across the river. Yes. Would you agree to me that the placement or the proposition that the placement of Liberty's body in terms of concealment completely depends upon the viewer's point of view? Yes. If someone wanted to conceal the bodies, there are plenty of leaves at the scene. Agreed. Plenty of sticks at the scene. I don't know about other sticks. And you've actually seen bodies in your experience that haven't even been concealed by leaves and sticks. Yes, I have. But maybe 3% of these bodies of Abby and Libby were covered by sticks. If you're looking top down, yes. Okay. If you take Abby and Libby's bodies, what percentage was covered by a stick? Very small amount, 3%. Okay. You've never seen a lack of blood, such as on Abby's hands, in a death investigation involving a neck or jugular vein. Correct. And that could be by multiple people holding her down. If there's multiple people, yes. Okay, good job. Good job on that one. Could the lack of blood on Abby's hands be by someone washing her hands afterwards? Someone washing her hands? I can't rule that out. In your work as a crime scene investigator, have you ever photographed cartridges from a crime scene? Yes, several times. Okay, would it be appropriate? Okay, I'm going to skip over that piece there. Let's see. Do you believe that Liberty was dragged across a bloody pool to the site where she was found? Yes. Why? There's blood staining that extends from the coagulation to her final location. There's blood staining on the right side of her body and the bottom of her leg that would have been drugged through to create this. So yes, I didn't see drag marks, but I can state that being there at the scene was also beneficial, that there's multiple thick layers of leaf fall. The position of her body would have had to been, the leg was on the ground for those flow patterns to occur because of gravity. For the projected pattern to occur and with her leg behind in that position is the best explanation, as she was in a seated position when the projected pattern was ejected out of the breach in either the carotid artery or the vein. And like I said, I believe she may have also been standing, but how many times was she stabbed? I believe at least 3. If she were in a sitting position and her head was pulled back or went backwards, would that put her in a position to where the level of the neck was above her face? If she's in a sitting position and her head went backwards, could that head go backwards to where her face was below her neck? I believe it all depends on the topography of the land for that bullshit. The best explanation is the moment when the body is dragged, it would automatically pull up the upper. So they're trying to explain the fact that she's upside down at some point. Okay. But again, how does Richard Allen drag a 200-pound body almost completely upside down? Just makes no sense with what they're trying to convey with this whole scenario. Okay. How does one man, Richard Allen, carry Liberty damn near upside down and not leave drag marks? I mean, just the math ain't mathing, right? But it's important here now. We're going to get to the upside down L. And he says, when you say the best explanation was that a transfer application, transfer contact with a bloody object of the tree, did you have a bloody object in mind? And again, this is fishing the narrative out of the guy. They trust me, this had already been coached. Okay. This had already been coached. He says, based upon the volume of the tree, the volume of the blood upon that tree, and the available voluminous stains that would have been on the decedent's body, its height upon the tree as well, we hypothesize that it was potentially her hand. That'd be a bullshit. I'm sorry, guys. The only way I could see that is that be a bullshit. You know what I mean?
Bruh. Bruh. Bruh.
In your opinion, do these injuries to Liberty's neck, did they have to be inflicted at the same time, or could they have been inflicted at different times? They could have. Now, this is an important point. All of you out there putting the pins in this. Number two, line number two. Did they have to be inflicted at the same time, or could they have been inflicted at different times? And here we go. They could have been inflicted at different times. Any of the injuries would have produced a tremendous amount of blood based upon it being a carotid or artery or jugular vein. Okay, so key takeaways. There are blood flow patterns on both girls going upside down. Liberty has 3 wounds. It could have all occurred at different times. Liberty is somehow moved. No defensive wounds, no drag marks. Abigail, no blood on the sleeve, no blood on the fingers, not much blood under her body. He's proposing that the hand made the marking to the tree. So Jennifer Auger says in line number 17, you have no idea how that transfer got on that tree, do you? And he says in line number 18, no. 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 He has no idea how that marking got on that tree. He admits. Again, he's becoming a defense expert or witness right here. And somehow this is overlooked. Where are the appellate attorneys looking at this? If we're going to retry, if we're going to deal with this appropriately, how can this be used? Because remember, these trolls want to convince the public in the world, and Nicholas McClellan is a troll. Just get your mind right, okay? Douglas Carter is a troll. Nicholas McClellan is a troll. Jerry Holman is a troll. These are all a bunch of fucking trolls. They want you to believe that Liberty touched the tree. That's why they had coached him to say such. But he acknowledges here he has no idea how the transfer got to the tree. Could have been other methods. Yes. Okay? This is why I say that be a bullshit. Because I've shown you so many times. I've shown you those markings on the tree. I've shown you the F tree. I don't think it's an F, okay? But I've shown you the tree so many times. There's zero probability that that marking on that tree is a handprint. Because let's be honest here. If Liberty's hand is bloody, and if he's saying Liberty's hand made that mark, have you seen the mark? I mean, have you seen the marking? So you tell me, how in the world the, does Liberty's handprint make distinct straight lines and right angles when the state's own expert acknowledges that he has no idea what made the marking on the tree? I mean, because this is major. Like I said last night in my show, I said that the state had to push this narrative that it's her hand that makes the marking on the tree. Because otherwise, how the fuck do you explain that marking on the tree? What kind of logic would have Richard Allen painting that marking in Liberty's blood? There's zero scenario I can imagine that Rick Allen would want to dip his hand in Liberty's blood and go paint a marking on a tree with two right angles and two straight lines, 6 inches by 2 inches. I mean, this is basic common sense. But the fucking trolls, they convinced the world and the jury that it's a handprint, which whose hand, for real, whose hand is not rounded? Every part of your hand is round. I mean, this is just, okay, like I'm saying, I'm beating up, this is our Friday night fights. I'm beating up Patrick Cicero because this is just unbelievable, right? This is absolutely unbelievable. You've got a young girl who's left a huge amount of blood in one spot. She's found in another spot, posed. She's got 3 injuries to the neck. Could have been made by different weapons at different times. There's no drag marks. There's no defensive wounds. At some point in time, this 200-pound girl is upside down. The other girl, there's a lacking of blood. There's 0 blood on the sleeves, 0 blood on the fingers, not a single defensive wound. And she's placed perfectly. Forget McClelland's fantasy narrative that she's alive there placing the phone. Like, don't you think she would have been more concerned with holding the wound? I mean, look, what's your first instinct? You get cut. Grab the wound. You get stabbed in the neck. Grab the wound. So he acknowledges that she could have been bound, but there's no evidence of binding. Not, I mean, we've heard rumors that there's evidence of handcuffs. You know, of course, Troll Farm wants to forget about that too. The trolls working for the prosecution in the state of Indiana, they want you to forget about that. We've heard these statements that there are marks on the wrist indicative of a pair of handcuffs binding both girls together, one on each wrist. I mean, one wrist of each girl, the girls being possibly bound together by a single pair of handcuffs. We've heard that. But there's just so many questions. There are so many questions. And to take the 30,000 foot view again, you look at the entire scenario. Someone explained to me this one. Since whenever do you have both girls nude at some point, and then the one girl dressed and immaculately clean? So you got a crime scene that you're looking at. You got a nude girl and a clothed girl. You got one girl who has 3 injuries to the neck, severe, with a large amount of blood all over the place. You got the other girl, a lacking of blood, 1 surgical stab wound They are both obviously posed. Like I say again, remember Robert Ives. They are moved and staged. Okay, so they're moved. Remember, both girls have blood patterns that flow upwards. They're both staged. I mean, it's very obvious. You got the magician and the hangman. It's absolutely obvious. Anyone who's seen those crime scene photos, you absolutely know Liberty is staged that way. That's not by chance that that arm is elevated like that, reaching towards a tree. There's a damn near entire tree on her left arm. So how do you explain that crime scene? And then add to that, sprinkle on the seasoning of the stick figurations having the appearance of bind runes. And like I said before, you're in a zone that's a circular clearing near a body of water that's flowing that's called Deer Creek, adjacent to a cemetery, in a bowl type depression. And you got two victims stage with what appears to be bind runes on top of their bodies, and you have some kind of figuration painted in the one of the victim's blood on a tree that even the state's own expert cannot say what made the thing. He speculates that it's Liberty's hand, but then he goes to say, I can't say what made I can't say what made that mark. But you got a prosecutor and an entire troll farm. Like I said, you got 50 people on the internet pushing this fucking narrative, including a bunch of podcasters and YouTubers. And they want you to believe that little Richard Allen, in an attempt to sexually assault these girls, did all that because he spooked. And we hit that logical fallacy before. He spooked by a van. Why in the world would he hang around and do all that shit if he was even capable of doing it? I mean, does Richard Allen even weigh 200 pounds? But let's say he was like Mr. Universe and, you know, he's the strongest man in Carroll County, like a bodybuilder, okay? Even if he could move those bodies in that way, why would he stick around and do all that after being startled by a van? And by the way, for those of you who have not visited the crime scene, Brad Weber's property where he would have been is in an elevated position. Now, any of you have studied military or snipers or any sort of reconnaissance? Come on. Elevated position is always the advantage. So how is it? Okay, so how is it that he's spooked by a van that's in an elevated position, yet he sticks around, and even if he's like Mr. Universe and Mr. Strongman, he can carry Liberty's 200-pound body, dead weight. Why would he stick around and do all that? And like I said, why would Abby stick that phone under her body, as McClellan tried to insinuate or tried to claim? You don't think that she'd reach for that wound before she reached for that phone? I mean, there's zero sense to any of this. And because this is a Friday night fight, I want to close it out with something even worse. Okay, just a moment. I want to pull this up here. Now, this is Mr. McClellan's closing argument, which is just absolutely despicable. I mean, I don't even know the word. Okay, guys, I'll ignore the chat for a minute so I can get through this because this right here is literally hurts my brain. Okay, let's see. He says, ladies and gentlemen, February 13th, 2017 is a day that this community will never forget. It's the day that Abby and Libby went to the trails for a walk and never returned. The day that both of them were murdered by Richard Allen. Oh, how do you know? Okay. 3 weeks or so ago, we told you that we would give you the evidence to convict Richard Allen. And the state has done just that. Zero evidence. Zero evidence. It's been a long trial. And so I want to go over a few of those pieces of evidence with you today. All right. Get your pens out because we're going to put some pins in this. This all started on February 13th of 2017 in this fantasy fictional narrative scenario. Becky Patty was at home with Liberty German and Abigail Williams. Had spent the night that night before. Both Abby and Libby were home off school that day and playing around the house. Playing with the new puppy that Libby had gotten not long ago. Abby and Libby had the idea to go to the trails. They asked their grandma, Becky, if they could go, and Kelsey offered to give them a ride. Last thing that Liberty said to Becky was, Gamma, it'll be okay. And they headed to the trail. On the way to the trail, they're on Snapchat. Liberty was posting pictures. The plan was for them to go to the trail and then for their Liberty's dad, Derek, to pick them up later that day. Kelsey dropped them off about 1:48 p.m. We can tell that from the phone data that Liberty German's phone is unplugged at about 1:48, and shortly after she's dropped off at the trail. Around 3 p.m. that afternoon, Derek arrives at the trail to pick up the girls, but he can't find them. He walks the trails. He goes to the Monon High Bridge. He calls Liberty German's phone several times. Can't find the girls. At 3:30, Derek calls Becky, and he tells her that he can't find the girls and the families get involved in the search. Anna Williams is contacted. No one can find the girls. Sometimes after 5, the family calls law enforcement to report the girls missing. We heard from Mitch Catron, the first one to respond. He took the call. He was at the station when the call came in. He goes to 625 and proceeds down the private drive to look for the girls around the Monon High Bridge. He continues down the drive and goes to Brad Weber's house and speaks to Brad Weber. Brad Weber says, yeah, look around my property. Look all you want, no problem. Oh, this explicates Brad Weber. This makes him a nice guy. You see the narrative pushing here is it's just like vomitous. It's unbelievable. He gives a switch. A quick search around the property, but finds nothing. Other law enforcement join in. The fire department joins in. Family members, community members join in for the search. And the search goes till 2 a.m., at which time horrific screams are heard that the law enforcement decides not to pay attention to. And then one of the girls is murdered who heard those screams. But ignore that. And you heard from several of these searchers and law enforcement officers that at this point, no one is looking for 2 dead bodies. They're looking for 2 girls. No one thought anything bad happened to Abigail Williams and Liberty German. That doesn't happen around here. It's a small community. These things don't happen. None of that makes any sense whatsoever. Why would you call off a search if you think your girls are alive out there in the middle of the night on a freezing night in February, Indiana winter? Okay. The search resumes around the 14th, around 7 a.m. No, it doesn't, because we know that at 4:30 a.m. when that news crew is out there broadcasting, coincidentally, that phone turns back on all of a sudden. We remember that as well. But of course, jury's not supposed to know that. And it continues around noon. Although, we've had several individuals from the community tell us they found their bodies way prior to that. But of course, we're supposed to forget that too and believe that they were found at noon. Pat Brown calls Steve Mullen and notifies him that he found the girls, that he found Abigail and Liberty. No, Pat Brown was. Hey, what's up? Thank you, Nitson. You did. When he arrived at the cemetery, he made his way down to the creek. He met with Pat Brown and other searchers, and they pointed to clothes in the creek, clothes that they had found, a shoe, a tie-dye shirt. When he was speaking to the members at the creek, they pointed back towards the cemetery to where the bodies of Abigail and Liberty were located. Deputy Giancola testified that he walked right past them and wasn't even able to see them from his vantage point, that they were hidden. Bullshit. That'd be a bullshit. That'd be a bullshit. I call bullshit on that. There's no way that he didn't see those girls. They're white as snow. I mean, come on. They're white as snow.
Bruh.
He walked to where the bodies were and secured the scene. He didn't get too close, but he observed that both Abigail and Liberty were dead, that their necks were cut. And remember this point for later, that he testified that Carroll County Sheriff's Department had carried 9mm firearms, not 40 caliber. Once Giancola found the bodies or located the bodies, he called other law enforcement. Crime scene technicians arrived and they started to process the scene. They started to document the scene. They started to take pictures. They started to collect evidence. Now, these next pictures are hard to see. And this is where he traumatizes the jury by showing him the absolute worst photos that exist of their bodies. But this is what they saw. And then he flashes the dead girls in front of them. This is emotional manipulation on the highest level. Okay. And as they processed the scene, they did so carefully, addressing one girl and then the next, carefully documenting everything they found. They collected a phone that was underneath the shoe, underneath the body of Abigail Williams, a phone that was covered in leaves and water and dirt. He adds that, by the way, to bootstrap the idea that Cecil tried to put across from his Google search, that water caused that headphone jack to activate and then deactivate the day before. They also collected a bullet found between Abby and Libby. The phone was immediately taken and processed. The information from the phone was extracted. From the phone, they found a video. The last video on the camera roll. State's Exhibit 200, published by Playing. We were able to determine from the download of the phone that the video was taken at 2:13 p.m. on February 13th, 2017. The video shows the moment that Abigail and Liberty were kidnapped, the moment they were forced down the hill by the guy in the video, Bridge Guy. You can hear the fear in their voice, see the fear in Abigail Williams' face. No, you can't. I don't see fear. I don't hear fear. He forced them down the hill with a gun. How do you know that? How do you know that anyone forced him down the hill with a gun? Because, oddly enough, I don't hear that be a gun, because that be a gun is not what is said. What is said is that we go down. Furthermore, I don't hear a gun racking. I hear twigs snapping under the feet of one person in the video. But here's the fairy tale narrative. He forced them down the hill with a gun he used to intimidate them, to scare them into doing what he wanted them to do. He used them to let them know that if they didn't comply, he was going to use that gun. You hear in the video, guys, the racking of a gun down the hill. We know there's a gun involved from the girl's own words. That be a gun. How can this be allowed to stand, y'all? How can it be allowed to stand? This is a prosecutor straight up lying to the jury, just like the law enforcement, the state police officer did. And I think Sheriff Liggett. Guys, the racking of a gun down the hill. We know there's a gun involved from the girl's own words. That be a gun. Bullshit. Fiction. It's unbelievable. How is this allowed in the United States of America in 2025, 2024? We also know there's a .40 caliber bullet found at the crime scene between the bodies of the girls. And so law enforcement takes that video and they enhance that video. But before they do that, they take screenshots in an attempt to get a better look at Bridge Guy. These screenshots are in sequential order. The first one, you don't see Bridge Guy. The very next frame, you do. He continues to follow Abigail Williams, and something in Liberty German sensed, something in Liberty told her that she needed to film this, that she needed to get out her camera and record this. And once that video was sent off and enhanced, this is what we found. State's Exhibit 246, published by Playing. Mr. McClelland, the enhanced video gives you a better image of what Liberty German recorded. The fact that Abigail Williams was being followed by Bridge Guy, the fact that he told them to go down the hill, the fear in Abigail Williams and Liberty German's voice, the fear in Abigail Williams' face, and so law enforcement began to interview people that were on the trail that day. They talked to Rayleigh Voorhees and Bree Wilbur, heard from Bree Wilbur that when she came onto the trail, she began at Freedom Bridge, and she took the picture there at 12:25 p.m., meaning she's telling the truth. That's when they got on the trail, and they walked on the trail towards Monon High Bridge, and when they got to the Monon High Bridge, it was around 12:43 p.m. She took a picture when she got there. And then they turned around and walked back towards Freedom Bridge. As they did, they talked, they took pictures, and near the end of their journey, they took a picture of the bench, or at the bench at 1:26 p.m. Remember how I said I believed that all of these digital data points were going to be used to build a timeline, to build credibility, to build this narrative, and this is exactly what he's doing here. Exactly. After that picture, Bree Wilbur testifies that she sees a man on the trail. You heard from Rayleigh Voorhees and Bree Wilbur. They both see the same man. They describe him as a creepy guy. He looked angry. He didn't respond or make eye contact like he was walking with a purpose. Yeah, but they also said he was fucking humongous. Very tall and muscular. We then heard from Betsy Blair. She was walking on the trail that day and she had a Fitbit on. Once again, this digital shit is being brought in to try to solidify their story. And she told you that she went on the trail once, left to use the restroom, came back, walked to the Monon High Bridge, and when she got there, she noticed a man on the first platform of the bridge. That'd be a bullshit. And remember, this is the one who's responsible for that young guy sketch that they suddenly threw in our faces in 2019, inexplicably. And who they said was not the same person as the old Bridge Guy sketch, who they said was a separate individual and who was a result of a what do they call it? An image that was put together by multiple witness statements. Just none of this has ever made sense. It's always been contradictions, confusion. She arrived at the trail around 1:45 and was there till about 2:15, meaning exactly when the oh shit zone is. She's there, Betsy Blair. That's right. Why does Betsy Blair's story seem so fucking unbelievable? Why does Betsy Blair's behavior that day seem so erratic and suspicious? She arrived around 2 o'clock. She testified she entered through the Mears entrance and went right to the Monon High Bridge. And again, as she gets there, she sees a man on the bridge on the first platform. She testified that he seemed to be watching for someone. Yeah, she also said he was about 20 years old and with poofy hair and beautiful fucking sparkly eyes and a youthful appearance. And he's like fucking Prince Charming. And she turns around. Like, for some reason, she goes there just to witness this guy after going somewhere else to use the restroom. She just magically just hurries her ass up, gets to that bridge, takes a picture, or whatever, sees the guy, blah, 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 and then gets the fuck out of there. Why? And as she walks back, she passes Abigail and Liberty. No, 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 no. That's another elaboration. She never said. She positively identified that she saw Abigail and Liberty. That's another liberty he's taking with this fucking narrative. Then you hear from questionable ass Sarah Carbon. She was driving on 300 North at around 4 p.m. She sees a guy walking down the side of the road who was muddy and bloody, looking like he had just slaughtered a pig. He avoids eye contact, his head's down, his hands are in his pockets. All the people interviewed that you heard from give a little bit of different description of who they saw. Yeah, because they all saw different people. But they are adamant that the person they saw was Bridge Guy. Bridge Guy from the video of Liberty's phone. There's no doubt in their mind, Bridge Guy who kidnapped Abby and Libby. Yeah, well, if that's true, McClellan, how in the hell does Richard Allen not leave any blood in his car? It just, how is he not captured on the Harvestor video? And how does he not leave any blood evidence in his car? Then we heard from Steve Mullen, who viewed the Harvestor video. He was able to observe Kelsey's car, according to Kelsey, Betsy's car, according to Betsy, Sarah's car, according to Sarah, which confirmed the time they were at the trail. Kelsey German passes the Harvestor headed towards the Mears entrance at 1:49 p.m. Betsy Blair is heading back to the trails for a second trip at 1:46, and then she's leaving at 2:18. And then Sarah Carbaugh's vehicle was seen at 3:56. Bullshit, 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 bullshit. This video confirmed the times that those witnesses testified about when they were at the trail, when they saw Bridge Guy. The phone they found at the scene was then further examined by First Sergeant Christopher Cecil. He did an extraction of the phone and a full analysis of what he found. He was able to locate health app data, Snapchat information, location data, more information about the video. And from this information, we know that Abigail and Liberty got to the trail around 1:48 p.m. And we know from each time that Liberty German logs onto Snapchat that it gives a GPS location of where she's at. And First Sergeant Cecil testifies that they will track that as they go down the trail towards the Monon High Bridge. And health app data confirms that there's movement, that they're moving as they get to the trails. He then analyzes the video. We know from the video again that it was taken at 2:13 on February 13th. 2:13 on 2:13. This is the 2:13 cult, you know? And he talks about the GPS location of that video. And it shows that it's at the Monon High Bridge. Yeah, but it also shows that it jumps over to the high school or something like that for some fucking reason. It's all kind of shit with that phone. So we're able to map Liberty's location, where she goes, and we show movement until 2:32 p.m. Phone stops moving. Doesn't move after that. Registers no movement on the health app data. So here's a question. Like I said, 2:32, right? 2:32? 2:32. 2:32. Until 4 p.m.? But Richard Allen is spooked by a van? So I want to go over the timeline that we have up to this point. 12:25, Bree Wilbur arrives at Freedom Bridge. She and the other girls are walking towards Monon High Bridge. 12:43, Bree Wilbur arrives at Monon High Bridge, takes a picture, and that picture's timestamped. Seems like that might be intentional. That they turn around and head back towards Freedom Bridge at 1:26. Bree Wilbur takes a picture at the bench on the trail somewhere in this area. Seems like that's intentional. After that, they run into Bridge Guy. No, they run into a huge fucking guy dressed in all black. Looks like he could rip the arms off of Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? But that's Richard Allen. Betsy Blair passes the Harvest Store on the way to the Mears entrance at 1:46, and she begins her walk towards a high bridge. She gets to the high bridge, turns around, and heads back to Mears. We know that Kelsey's car is headed that way, 1:48, right after she drops off Liberty and Abigail at the Mears entrance. So you telling me? So Liberty and Abigail walk towards High Bridge. 2:00, Betsy Blair reaches High Bridge. She sees the man on the first platform. She turns around and heads back towards the Mears entrance. And as she does, she passes Abigail and Liberty. No, she doesn't. That's unconfirmed. This is your theory. Abigail and Liberty proceed out onto the High Bridge. We know this from the phone information, Snapchat GPS location. Then at 2:13, the video begins. The video that Liberty took with her phone, the video that shows them being kidnapped by Bridge Guy. No, it doesn't. And then at 2:32, the phone stops moving. We then know Sarah Carbaugh, traveling to the west on 300 North, she sees a guy that's muddy and bloody, like he just slaughtered a pig. And she passes Harvest Store at 3:56. So again, 2:32 to 3:56. How many minutes is that? 2:32 to 3:56 just does not make sense. So at this point, we know that Bridge Guy, the Bridge Guy's the guy on the video that Liberty took, and he's the one who kidnapped Abigail and Liberty. Well, I didn't see that. I heard someone say, "Guys, down the hill." Who knows who that is and what that was? And after that, they're dead. Well, we don't know that because we know this. They never found those fucking bodies. As close as they were to that trail, they never found those bodies. Even in the hours and hours and hours of daylight they had the next morning. So first of all, you had hours of daylight after 3:56 p.m., right? You had hours of daylight after 3:56 p.m. Then you had hours of daylight in the morning. And let us not forget, you have the entire overnight time period. Nobody finds the girls until noon? But here we go with the logic. And remember, this is the logic that Mike and Becky Patty put across after sentencing as the reason that Richard Allen is guilty. So at this point, if we can determine who Bridge Guy is, we can determine who killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Bridge Guy is guilty of felony murder, an act of kidnapping of Abigail and Liberty. In the act of kidnapping Abigail and Liberty, in the act of kidnapping, Abigail and Liberty died. He's guilty of felony murder. So fast forward to 2022. Investigator Kathy Shanks comes across a tip, a leads form. She's a volunteer. No, she's classified it as an investigator who's assisting with organizing the numerous tips and files that were involved in this investigation. She comes across this lead sheet. Who signed it? Who put cleared? Who wrote cleared on that? Can we determine that? Can we explain why and how he was cleared? She comes across this miraculous lead sheet from Dan Doolin, and it sticks out to her because she's just an amazing grandmother who cooks well. And it immediately strikes her as something she's not seen before, something that has not been followed up on because she is just Sherlock Holmes. She found a lead sheet about a man who was on the trail on February 13th between 1:30 and 3:30, and that man had run into the girls on the trail, Bree Wilbur and Rayleigh Voorhees. Kathy immediately took this tip to Tony Liggett. This tip stuck out to Tony Liggett because he knew that the girls had run into the bridge guy, and if we could find bridge guy, we could find the killer, and all the indications pointed to this being bridge guy. So Tony Liggett got with Steve Mullen. See, this is telling you the truth now. Who set this guy up? Kathy Shank, Tony Liggett, Steve Mullen. So Tony Liggett got with Steve Mullen and began to follow up on this tip. This tip identified the man who was on the trail February 13th, 1:30, 3:30 as Richard Allen. So they tried to verify information. They called in Dan Doolin. They took his reports. He typed up a narrative for him that he had found that day. He downloaded a BMV picture of Richard Allen. Steve Mullen went to the Harvest store. The information he found in the BMV that Richard Allen owned a 2016 black Ford Focus. And from your questions, we were able to determine that this is the only 2016 black Ford Focus registered in Carroll County in 2016 and 2017. So Steve Mullen goes to the Harvest Store video and he finds a car that matched the description of the car owned by Richard Allen. Tony Liggett goes to CBS where Richard Allen works and he takes pictures of the car and they compare those pictures to what they find on the Harvest Store. And Steve Mullen testified that one clue he was able to recognize is the wheels on the car, the fact that the light is emitted through the wheels on the car. And he testified this car matches the description of Richard Allen's 2016 black Ford Focus. I mean, why even put all this in here? All this shit's unnecessary. This is stacking the deck, which is what they've done this entire deal since Richard Allen's arrest, right? What they've done is stack the deck. The timestamp on this Harvest Store video, 1:27 p.m., falls in line with what Richard Allen told Dan Doolin in 2017. He got to the trails around 1:30, so October 13th of 2022, Steve Mullen, Tony Liggett called Richard Allen in for an interview. No, they called him in to fuck him over and arrest him. You got to see the interview, and you got to see it for yourself. Richard Allen confirms on that day that he was wearing the same clothes that Bridge Guy was wearing on February. No, he wasn't, because that jacket did not exist. And the jacket the Bridge Guy was wearing was not a Carhartt. And the jacket Richard Allen owned had no DNA and no blood and no blood stains and no evidence whatsoever tying that jacket to the crime. Stacking the deck further. He confirms he was on the trails that day, and he actually says, I went not only on the trails, but out on the high bridge, out on the first platform, exactly what Betsy Blair told you. He also states that he didn't see anybody else on the trail except for 3 girls that he ran into. Yeah, 3. 3. He didn't see any other males. Didn't see any other group of girls, just those 3 girls. Now, in this interview, he did change his time. Instead of 1:30 to 3:30, he changed it from 12:30 to 1:30. And he's cooperating. And this, as the interview goes on, he becomes more aggressive. He becomes hostile. No, he doesn't become hostile. Like, this is, again, it's just like putting him in that jumper and the cuffs with the shock collar, the leash, the vest, whatever you want to fucking call it. He's walked around by like fucking 5 big ass dudes. Like, he's made to look like an absolute monster for public relations purposes. Don't you understand how this works? As the interview goes on, he becomes more aggressive, more hostile. As the investigators start to confront him with evidence, he becomes angry. He refuses to let them search his phone. Well, why in the fuck would that even matter? That's not the same phone he would have owned in 2017. You see what I mean? He refuses to let them search his house. No fucking. Would you? Who's going to let any cop search their house without a search warrant in 2024, 2025, or 2023, or 2022, or any in the modern era? And then asked if Bridge Guy's him, he states, well, if that picture's taken with the girl's phone, it's not me. Based on the information law enforcement had at the point, got a search warrant and searched his home. In the home, we found a 2016 black Ford Focus. Well, that's no mystery. You can see the light emitting through the rims. It's irrelevant. Steve Mullen said that that was important in identifying the car in the Harvest Store video. Also find several knives and box cutters. Oh, stop. See, this is another troll farm tactic. Remember, they said, oh, Richard Allen worked at CBS. He would have had access to box cutters. Bitch, I got box cutters. Why? Because I got to open boxes sometimes. Well, and sometimes I use them to strip cable. Owning a box cutter is irrelevant. Owning knives is it up? I own knives. Oh my God. What am I doing? I got knives. I got a box cutter or two. I own a Carhartt jacket. Oh. We find several knives and box cutters. We find a blue Carhartt jacket. Surprise, surprise. Same jacket Bridge Guy's wearing. Is that true? Is that true? Don't you think if that was the same jacket Bridge Guy was wearing, it would be used as a piece of forensic evidence to bury this motherfucker under the prison? This is called stacking the deck. Same surprise, little smart ass bitch. Find a blue Carhartt jacket. Surprise, surprise. Same jacket Bridge Guy is wearing, which is what the fucking troll farm ran around YouTube saying for a year. Find various cell phones. Oh, double murderer there. Who doesn't own various cell phones? Find a Hope box with a .40 caliber planted Winchester bullet in it. Again, same brand and caliber found at the crime scene between the two girls in a Hope box filled with memories, mementos, pictures, keepsakes. Also find a .40 caliber Sig Sauer firearm, same caliber as the bullet found at the crime scene between the two girls. But did you mention Ron Logan or Brad Weber or anyone else in the fucking area who might own a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson or Sig Sauer? And this is where he actually gets comical. Like, this shit actually goes to Twilight Zone Circus World. This is Clown World shit. The Bridge Guy starter kit. I'm not making this shit up. Look at the screen. I'm reading it. The Bridge Guy starter kit. Blue Carhartt jacket. .40 caliber Winchester round in the Hope box. .40 caliber Sig Sauer gun. Now Richard Allen did have other .40 caliber ammunition in his house, but that brand was Blazer. The only Winchester Smith & Wesson Winchester round he had in his house was in a Hope box with other mementos and keepsakes. Again, the same brand and caliber of the round found at the crime scene. Also found pictures where he often visited the Monon High Bridge. Well, that would mean it's not unusual for him to be there. He's familiar with the area, visited oftentimes with his family. How many people in Carroll County or in Indiana, period, have visited the High Bridge? Oh, I visited the High Bridge. Oh, no. Oh, my. Oh, my. Let's see. I own box cutters. Yeah, check. I own knives. Check. I own several phones. Check. I own a Carhartt jacket. Check. Oh, man. I own .40 caliber ammunition. Check. I've been to the High Bridge. Check. The Prof is Bridge Guy. The Prof Rich guy starter kit. Through the search, we found a lot of electronic devices. We searched those devices. First Sergeant Christopher Cecil told you he searched several, extracted several of Richard Allen's devices. But one that was missing was the phone that he had in 2017, which is odd, I must admit. Where is that phone? We know that because Dan Doolin took down the identification number for that phone, and all the phones we searched in the house when we searched in 2022, none of them matched the phone. But in some of those phones, we found a Google search from Richard Allen from April 17th of 2022. He searches Delphi, Indiana news at 10:47 p.m. And immediately after that, he searched, should I die now? Die now. Should I die now? And again, should I die now? The gun is sent to the lab to be tested. It's tested by Melissa Oberg. Okay. I must admit, I've never searched, should I die now? That's a very odd thing to search. But I also don't suffer from depression. But searching Delphi, Indiana news. Oh my God, Jesus. Do you know how many times the Prof has searched Delphi or Delphi murders or Delphi, Indiana news or Abby and Libby or Delphi murders? I mean, oh my God, I've probably got 10,000 searches that say Delphi in my computer, in my Google searches. It's tested by Melissa Oberg. She's got 16 years of experience with the Indiana State Police Lab on testing firearms. She's able to, you know what that tells me? She's entrenched in ISP. Okay, that's what tells me that she owes her life to ISP because she's been on salary for fucking 16 years from ISP. Do you think she's not going to do anything she can for ISP? I mean, this is her career. She's retiring off of ISP, guys. Her house bought by ISP, her car bought by ISP, the clothing she wears, ISP, the toilet paper she wipes her ass with, ISP. She's able to conclude that the bullet found at the scene between the two girls was cycled through Richard Allen's .40 caliber Sig Sauer, that the ejector marks, the extractor marks, and the chamber face all match Richard Allen's gun, that the bullet from the crime scene came from Richard Allen's gun, but she's not able to exclude any other .40 caliber Sig Sauer, but I'll leave that part out. Now, through the investigation, she examined all types of guns. She testified about that, and she was not able to conclude that the bullet found at the scene was cycled through any of those guns except Richard Allen's gun, but she also was not able to exclude them either. Oh, and her results were verified 3 times by her boss, who's the former president of AFTE. We've heard a lot about AFTE. One more thing, she testified in her career that she'd never been wrong. Self-verification like a motherfucker. How'd you like Prof? How'd you like me if I get up here on this show and I say, yeah, y'all, you know, I've never been wrong. I've never been wrong. You know, just 400 episodes of Delphi. I've never been wrong. You wouldn't think I was too credible, would you? Wouldn't it be a little more believable if I'd say, you know, guys, to be honest with you, I try my hardest to always be correct because I never want to be wrong. But since I'm human and everybody makes mistakes, and this case is extremely difficult, there are probably times in which I've been somewhat wrong. But the minute I find out that I'm wrong, I certainly address it and correct the record for you guys. I never want to lead you wrong. I'd always come and correct that and correct my errors because I don't want to be wrong. But no, she testified that in her career, she'd never been wrong. See how the pieces are starting to fall into place? See how the evidence is starting to confirm and reaffirm that Richard Allen is Bridge Guy? Not only do we have him on the trails at the time, we now have a bullet that ties him to the crime scene, but also doesn't necessarily exclude anyone else in the world. So Richard Allen comes back for an interview on October 26, 2022. He confirms, I've never loaned my gun out to anybody. I've never loaned my ammunition out to anybody. I've never loaned my car or my clothes out to anybody. States he'd never been mushroom hunting in the area where the girls were found. He has no explanation of how his bullet from his gun ended up between the bodies of Abby and Libby, 6 inches from Libby's foot. There's no explanation except the bullet came from his gun when he racked the gun to intimidate the girls right before he killed them. How do you know that? Again, this is just totally pulling it out of thin air. So now he inserts a total piece of fictional or hypothesis that, well, he racked the gun to intimidate the girls right before he killed them. That's how that bullet gets there. And I'm just going to pull that one out of thin air. There's no proof of that whatsoever, but I'm going to just implant it into the jurors' minds. That's the explanation. Much like he racked the gun at the top of the Monon High Bridge when he forced them down the hill. Once again, fantasy. There's no proof of that. That's a sound of a twig snapping on the audio. It's not a sound of a gun rack. I know what a gun racking sounds like. It'd be much louder. In other words, the amplitude would be much louder. It'd sound like steel, not like a twig snapping. But here we go again with the further stacking of the deck and hypothesizing a fictional narrative. He was using the gun as a way to force the girls to comply with what he wanted them to do. He was using that power over the girls. And you saw as he was confronted with these things, he became angrier and angrier. Yeah, it's more like indignant. He didn't become angry. He became more and more indignant at the accusations that he's a double child murderer. And then with his wife brought in, you saw the interaction with him and his wife. You saw how he tried to manipulate her. You know, I didn't do this. He tried to convince her. I didn't see that. And at the end of the interview, he's arrested. Yeah, no, let's remember, this show is called something about Jerry Doughboy Holman, right? Remember, Jerry Holman was an absolute maniac in that interview. And besides, have you noticed that there's a few seconds spliced out of that footage? Because the footage we did get, Jerry Holman is behaving as an absolute fucking unhinged maniac, screaming at the top of his lung, slamming the door, ordering this guy's wife around. So on top of using the Reed technique, he's absolutely fucking unhinged, screaming and yelling like a maniac. And there's something cut out of that footage. Did he get even more unhinged than we've already seen? At the end of the interview, he's arrested. So at this point in the investigation, we're able to place Richard Allen at the bridge at the time the girls were kidnapped and able to confirm that he is Bridge Guy and that he ordered the girls down the hill. Further able to confirm that he racked his gun and he lost a bullet at the location where the girls were murdered. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Now, when he's arrested, he's moved to the DOC for his safety. No, he was moved to the DOC to be threatened and intimidated by the Odinist guards and John Gallipo and forcibly medicated and sexually sextorted by Monica Walla. You heard Dr. Martin testify to keep him safe. That was our goal. Yeah, safe? Safe from himself and safe from other inmates. He was moved there and eventually he was sent to Westville. And that could have been the case, but that could have been all that we have here to present you. But it does not, because once he gets to Westville, he starts to confess. Yeah, I notice you leave out all of the pertinent details and the context surrounding those confessions. But before that, blah, 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 he has a phone call to his mom where he confesses, and he's given himself to Jesus. He's found the Lord, and it's important for him to tell his mom, not only his mom, but he makes sure that his mom tells Kathy. The very next day, a phone call to Kathy. I did it. I killed Abigail Williams. I killed Abby and Libby. You forgot the part about I shot him. Then he plays the phone calls. The phone call he made to his wife Unprovoked, unpressured, or free of his own will. Kathy, I did it. I killed it. How do you know that he's unprovoked? Because it sounds to me like there's someone standing over him, forcing him to make those phone calls. And we'll never know because we know how prisons work in the United States. And the way they work is we'll never fucking know. But it's pretty interesting that heads rolled after all of this. And Gallipo gets put the fuck out of there. And Monica Walla gets put the fuck out of there. And I wouldn't be surprised. What happened to these Odinist guards, Jones and Robinson? Were they put the fuck out of there yet? Dr. Walla writes down that Richard Allen states, I killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. I'm sorry. Yeah, did you see that? It looks like literal third grade handwriting. It looks like literal third grade handwriting. But that's a guy in his right mind. He reported committing the murders on his own. He stated he made sure they were dead because he didn't want them to suffer. But of course they suffered. That makes zero sense. He reported not knowing why he did it, but stated he knew his intentions were sexual in nature. I don't think I had sex with them. He also stated he didn't remember. Of course, he don't even know his ass from a hole in the wall because of the amount of drugs and solitary confinement. He mentioned not knowing the ages of the victims, but reported they were at least 18 or 19 years of age, but could have been as young as 11. That doesn't even make sense. Again, the utterings of a madman who's drugged out of his fucking mind. Listen to the logic in it. They're at least 18 or 19, but could have been as young as 11. He reported being selfish all his life and being a coward, and he got scared and took their lives in order to preserve his own. He stated he hoped he could get to apologize to the families of the victims and wish he could go back and change his actions. And we heard from Dr. Walla that on that day, no odd behavior until after his attorney visits and sudden shift in presentation was purposeful, and that he was not suffering from psychosis when he made this admission. Yeah, but he was suffering from psychosis. Cannot believe it, man. He goes on, several confessions. You're going to be able to read these, but April 7th of 2023, a door sheet. God, I'm so glad nobody gave up on me after I killed on Abigail Williams and Liberty German. I, Richard Matthew Allen, killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German all by myself. Nobody helped me. I'm not crazy. I'm only acting like I'm crazy. April 8th from the door sheet. I'm ready to confess. I swear to God, I killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. April 9th. I killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Funniest joke is how I killed them. I got what I deserved for what I did, and I hope I burn in hell for what I did. Remember, all of this is happening at the absolute height of his psychotic episode. And that's all confirmed. There's zero doubt that this is all transpiring at the absolute pinnacle of his psychotic break. But of course, we're going to gloss over that, McClellan. April 22nd, I killed those girls. So I have to kill myself. April 23rd, I killed Abigail Williams, Liberty German. My wife wasn't involved. I would like to confess. April 26th, I killed Abigail Williams, Liberty German. April 29th, she said he killed the girls in Delphi with a box cutter and he stole and left in the trash at CBS. That he wants to write a confession. And that was only planning to rape them, but he got scared and panicked and killed them instead. Then he meets with Walla again on May 3rd. 2023, and he gives even more detailed confession. Allen reported wanting to confess to his crime. He wanted to tell his story. He reported seeing his parents on the morning of the crime. He was supposed to get to eat lunch with them, but opted out and bought himself a six-pack. He drank 3 of those beers and finished the rest later. He said, I got bundled up once I got out to the trail, laid in wait. He reported seeing those girls. Like, that's literally a Gray Hughes phrase, by the way, that Monica Walla, I'm pretty sure she snagged that from one of Gray Hughes' live streams. I'm absolutely sure that Monica Walla snagged that laid in wait phrase from Gray Hughes when Gray Hughes was developing this narrative for fucking 5 years before the arrest of Richard Allen. He reported seeing the girls falling on the bridge, reported doing something with his gun, and stated, I think that's where the bullet fell out. I ordered them down the hill. No, there's no bullet there. His intention was to grape the girls, and he mentioned that they were older than their biological ages. He thought they were older than their ages. He said he saw a van that scared him and caused him not to follow through with graping the girls, but instead forced them to cross the creek and then cutting their necks. He indicated again, I wanted to make sure they were dead. He reported covering the bodies with tree branches and exited the area by keeping off the trail as not to be seen. Well, how on earth then did he end up on the road and being seen by Carba? He said he returned his vehicle, which was parked at a nearby building, and continued living his life after time passed because he hadn't been caught. We get to May 10th. He has a phone to call Kathy. Phone call to Kathy. You know, I need you to know I did this. It's okay, honey. I did it. I killed Abigail Williams. Then May 17th, the phone call you heard to his mom. I'm just worried that you guys aren't going to love me because of the fact I said that I did it. Mom, I wouldn't sit here and tell you if I did it if I didn't. Again, a phone call that's unprovoked. He does it of his own free will, not suffering from psychosis. You don't know who was standing over and make him make that call. Phone call shows that he also trusts Dr. Walla, his therapist. No, he was in love with her because she used her sexuality to manipulate him. And he's meeting with her every day. After this, as she's also listening to Rick Snay and the Prof and fucking Gray Hughes and fucking whoever else. And she's in all the Facebook groups discussing his guilt, but she's treating him medically. Yeah, sure, that's appropriate. Another phone call June 5th to his wife. You know why I'm here? I killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. And then finally on February 4th, when he's moved to Wabash, he's sorry for killing the girls. Now, during this time, the time he's making these confessions, we heard testimony from Harshman that he's listening to all these phone calls. He's watching the videos from Westville and Wabash and Cass County, and he's listening as Richard Allen makes these confessions to his mom and wife. He also reads over the reports from Dr. Walla, 2 reports that I showed you earlier, 2 reports that include confessions and details of those confessions. And he said he listened to over 700 phone calls. He reviews all the reports, reviewed those phone calls, and he's going through Dr. Walla's report. He notices something, a detail he didn't know before. A detail that wasn't in police reports, but it was all over fucking social media, but never mind that. That wasn't put out, and a detail about Richard Allen being scared after he saw a van, a detail only the killer would know. Well, does that mean Gray Hughes is a killer? And does that mean half of fucking Reddit's a killer? Does that mean that the helicopter video pilot and anyone who's ever seen the helicopter video is a killer? He thought Richard Allen may have seen the van on 625 and specifically the private drive where 625 turns into the private drive. As we've said, the private drive leads to the home of Brad Weber, the only home it leads to. So he started to do some research and looked up Brad Weber's B&B information from 2017, and he found that Brad owned a van from February 2017. And so Steve Mullen and Brian Harshman, they called Brad Weber in for an interview, and they want to follow up on this info. Before that, they noticed Brad Weber had given an interview back in February 17th of 2017 where he said he was at work that day. On February 13th till 2:02 p.m. Then he clocked out and he got home sometime around 2:30. Then they re-interviewed Brad Weber. He said the same thing, clocked out at 2:02 and got home somewhere around 2:03 to 2:30. You even heard from Brad Weber testify twice that he left work at 2:02, went straight home, and got home somewhere around 2:30. You also heard from Brad Weber that on that day he was driving his van, and that route he took to his house was down that private drive, and that when he would have been on that private drive is the exact time Richard Allen would have been there with the 2 girls. That is the van that he saw that spooked him. Something only the killer would know, and Richard Allen confessed it to Dr. Walla. No, Dr. Walla would have known it, and Prof would have known it. Anybody who's fucking followed this case closely, and there are a whole bunch of people, knew it. Finally, let's not forget that Brian Harshman, in listening to over 700 of these phone calls, got a feel for Richard Allen's voice. And boy, this is what pisses me off. He told you that when Richard Allen was talking on the phone with his mom and wife, his rate, his demeanor, his tone was all the same when he made the confessions as when he's talking about mundane, everyday things. And finally, he told you as part of an investigation, he watched the video from Liberty German's phone. He watched it dozens of times. And he told you on the stand, there is no doubt in his mind that the voice on the video is Richard Allen's and that Richard Allen is Bridge Guy. And now all the pieces are clear. All the pieces are put together. So what does the state have to prove? Count 1 is murder. The defendant, Richard Allen, killed Abigail Williams while committing or attempted to commit kidnapping, which is defined as the person who knowingly or intentionally removes another person by force or threat of force from one place to another. Richard Allen is Bridge Guy. Richard Allen used his gun to force the girls down the hill. He kidnapped them and later murdered them. We call this felony murder. The murder is committed during the commission of a felony. That's what Richard Allen did. Count 2 is the same, but with Liberty German. He not only forced Abigail Williams down the hill, he forces Liberty German down the hill. Count 3, the defendant knowingly or unintentionally killed Abigail Williams. He slit their throat. He waited to make sure they were dead, and he left behind his calling card a bullet from his gun. Count 4, murder, again, knowingly or intentionally killed Liberty. February 13th, 2017, a day that started out like any other day, a day where Liberty German decided to go to the trail with her best friend, Abigail Williams, and enjoy being outside. But a day that bridge guys stole their youth and the life away from both of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Who wrote this? The state showed you that Richard Allen is a bridge guy. No, it alleges. Richard Allen went to the trail that day with his .40 caliber Sig Sauer, that he arrived at 1:30, that he ran into Bree Wilbur and Rayleigh Voorhees, and that he was grumpy, creepy, and walked with a purpose. And he also continued down the trail and went out to the High Bridge on the first platform. That's where Betsy Blair sees him. She sees him on Monon High Bridge on the first platform, and she's testifying he's there waiting for someone. As she returns to the Mears entrance where she came in, she passes Abigail and Liberty on their way to the Monon High Bridge. Richard Allen lies in wait. Gray Hughes. He waits for Abigail Williams and Liberty German, then follows them across Monon High Bridge. And as Liberty German reaches the end of the bridge, she looks back and sees Abigail Williams as being followed by Richard Allen. Something in Liberty causes her to turn her phone on and record the man following Abigail Williams. Some feeling. She sensed this wasn't right. Richard Allen approaches the girls. He racks his gun and orders them down the hill. There was nobody else on the trail that day during the time that matches the description of bridge guy except Richard Allen. No, that's not true. There were many. I mean, there's been all this talk lately of Daniel Pearson. All this bullshit talk by a certain few narrative steerers. But there was a Daniel Pearson. We also know from Brian Harshman that Richard Allen is the voice on the video. No, but see, that's the bullshit. That'd be a bullshit. Brian Harshman is not a voice expert. The voice on the phone is too muffled, too inconsistent, and too brief to do any sort of voice identification. We know from the hard data from the phone that video Liberty took was at 2:13 p.m. on 2/13 because we're dealing with the 2/13 cult. Richard Allen used his gun and his power as he forces these girls down the hill in this fantasy world scenario. As they go down the hill, his intention is to grape them. We know that when he gets to the bottom of the hill, there's a pause. He begins to have his way with them. What? If you look at the health app data, there's a pause in the movement for 7 minutes. I mean, he has 7 minutes. You see, this is Gray Hughes theory, too. If you've ever studied Gray Hughes theory is exactly this, that they get to the bottom of the hill and they start to have time together. I mean, it's just, you can't make this shit up, dude. But before he can finish his deed or deeds, he sees a van. Brad Weber's coming home from work down his private drive to his home, and he scares Richard Allen. So how does Richard Allen, how fast? Here's a rhetorical question or speculative scenario that needs to be investigated. Brad Weber's coming down that drive. That drive's not that damn long. Okay? What speed is he traveling down that drive? 25 miles an hour or something? How far does he travel down that drive until he would physically see those individuals in this scenario? How fast is he going? What is his line of sight? And when would he be likely to see Richard Allen and these two girls? Because how much time would that give Richard Allen to skedaddle and guide two girls at gunpoint further towards the creek and then down into the creek, which is at flood stage, and then across that rushing, freezing creek at flood stage, and then back up the other side? You're telling me Brad Weber, what is he going 2 miles an hour? with blinders on. Just this part doesn't make sense, you see? But it gets even worse because he says here, Richard Allen forces the girls across the creek to a spot in the woods, a secluded spot, and he kills them. He cuts their neck. Yeah, but the problem is, from Brad Weber's property, from his house, you can see directly down onto the crime scene, literally. Makes no sense. I mean, and furthermore, like I said, he's so you mean he rushes away from Brad Weber's oncoming van, but then he stays from 2:30 until 4 o'clock? That's an hour and a half. Damn near an hour and a half. So damn near an hour and a half, he lingers doing things to naked girls, naked kids, while someone's at an elevated position with the ability to look right down onto him and there's no leaves. Liberty German is completely naked. Abigail Williams naked at one time, but when she's found, she's dressed partially in Liberty's clothes. Once they got him to the woods, he used his gun again. He racks his gun and drops a bullet, and then it happens. He cuts Liberty German's throat first, and as she clings to life, she's grabbing for her throat, struggling to stay alive. We heard from Pat Cicero, and you saw in the picture she begins to cry, and there's blood outlined in a tear. See, there comes the emotional manipulation. Then he focuses his attention to Abigail Williams and cuts her throat and watches her die slowly. Yeah, but again, why is she not reaching for that wound? Instead, reaching for the phone? He then crawls out of the woods. See, he used that word purposely there to make him less than human. He crawls out of the woods and walks back to his vehicle down 300 North like nothing happened. Sarah Carbaugh saw him and said he was muddy and bloody, just like he slaughtered a pig. And for 5 years, he lives in a community. Yeah, but once again, I said there's no blood on his clothing. There's no blood in his car. And he doesn't pass the camera. Something's not adding up. And for 5 years, he lives in this community. For 5 years, he lives amongst us. But what he didn't realize is he left behind a cartridge from the blah, blah, blah fantasy world. But guess what? Okay, so 5 years, he's working at the fucking biggest store in town. He's at CVS. So he's working at the most prominent fucking place in town. He's at CVS. And you're telling me that Sarah Carbaugh, Betsy Blair, Rayleigh Voorhees, or any other of those kids don't ever have the opportunity to go into CVS and make eye contact with Richard Allen and realize that's the guy they saw that day? That's the thing that bewilders. It boggles the mind. For 5 years, he's working right there in town. He's working at a Walmart. He's working at a CVS, and nobody in the fucking community, not one of those persons out there that allegedly saw him that day, sees him in the CVS. What are the odds? I mean, dude, in a town like that, guarantee. I would love to ask any of these witnesses, quote unquote. I'd love to ask Sarah Carbaugh, bitch, how many times you been in CVS since 2017? Voorhees, how many times you been in CVS? Bree, Wilbur, how many times you been in CVS? All of you, how many times have you been in CVS when Richard Allen was working? You never saw him? I wouldn't be surprised if they saw him in the bars. Because, you know, him and Kathy, they frequented, they played pool and drank in the bars and shit. You're telling me they didn't see him in CVS, they didn't see him in the bars, they didn't see him around town for 5 fucking years? But he also left behind Liberty's phone. Now I'm beginning to think that thing was planted. Planted bullet, planted phone. Those two key pieces of evidence led investigators to him. And then finally, if that wasn't enough, we have his drug-induced, coerced, forced confessions under duress at the hands of fucking Odinist guards in prison, and a manipulative psychologist, wherein he states, "I killed Abigail and Williams and Liberty German over and over." Goes into detail on how he does it. Yeah, including shooting them, like I said. Uh, and in the least of those admissions, he gives you a detail only that he could have, only the killer could have. Yeah, the van, nope, that's a dud. And so I believe the evidence firmly convinces you that Richard Allen is Bridge Guy and that killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. I'm going to ask you to consider all the evidence and enter a conviction of guilty against Richard Allen on all 4 counts. Counts 1 and 2 for felony murder, counts 3 and 4 for murder. Thank you. Okay, I'm done. Now listen. So here you see how a jury can be convinced of the guilt of someone that there's no evidence for. You see, this was my mission tonight, to try to show you the unlikelihood of the evidence and the very bizarre behavior of all of these state actors and the state police and the prosecutor, and how fucking crazy that press conference was. And to show you a little of the actual evidence at the crime scene through Cicero. And then to show you the absolute unbelievable performance of Nicholas McClellan in this closing argument, to stitch together this narrative and stack the deck and point everyone directly at Richard Allen with a complete lack of evidence. And so, coming back again to this jury, I think it was a horrible jury selection process. Now look, let's be clear here. There are firms that specialize in not only public relations for the prosecutor and at painting this narrative of your suspect, but they also specialize in jury selection, in teaching you how to convince a jury in so many ways. In other words, cases are won or lost based on people's perceptions of the facts, not the facts themselves. And there are agencies that specialize in preparing the witnesses, in selecting the juries, and strategizing the case, and on coaching everyone involved, and the public relations side of it as well, with the media, with certain journalists, with the YouTubers, and with the fucking all of the possible media that exists, including social media. Because, like I said, their entire profession revolves around spinning the jury's perception of the facts, not the literal facts. And so just think about that. This entire effort had the witnesses, the experts, the lawyers, and the jury all molded into a certain way that they could be directed in this direction aimed directly at Richard Allen's forehead. And so when we go back to this verdict and look at reasonable doubt, what you have to come to the conclusion of at the end of the day is the state won the perception game and the defense failed the reasonable doubt game. And this is the travesty here. This is the travesty. Because you got to ask yourselves, is it right? Is it right? You see, I would say if this guy was guilty, you could say, it was right. Do you know that he's factually guilty? I mean, all of these fucking trolls rolling around this universe. How do you know he's factually guilty? Because this game was won by the state of Indiana because they hired the right people to mold this thing into what they needed it to be. And the defense failed them. I mean, not necessarily that I'm blaming the defense. I think the defense was hijacked, okay, compromised, misled, distracted, sabotaged. And so, let's look at if they're on equal footing, right? The defense had a certain bar they needed to reach. And they failed to meet that bar. They failed to instruct and argue effectively toward the jury on reasonable doubt, even though there was a mountain of it in this case. And the prosecutor managed to successfully manipulate the entire case because of the power of the state. Look, they had, I don't know, what do you say, 10 times the funding. Okay. They had 10 times. Money is power, right? Money is power. And they're power in numbers as well. So look at what the state had behind them. They had 10 times the money, and they had 10 times the collusion, which means power. This is why I mentioned the Freemasons and the police and all the other stuff. They had the network of power. They had the power of the dollar, almighty dollar. And the defense was operating at a deficit already to begin with. They were handicapped to begin with. And then they were sabotaged and derailed. And so what do you have as a result? You have what we have here now. And anyway, I hope that was an enjoyable show for you. I know it was a lot. There's a lot to go through. My voice is absolutely shot. But I hope that I built a good show for you tonight to consider these things, especially if you're a new viewer or first-time viewer, you're new to Delphi. I mean, I think you're in the right spot. This is absolutely the sort of conversation that you need to be consuming to get caught up to speed on this aspect of the case. And I cover, let's be real here. I cover this case from every angle. I cover the case from all aspects of the case, from every angle. And but this particular angle, which is the core of it, this is what you need to get caught up on. So if you're watching this, seeing me for the first time and stuff, I just welcome you. I thank you for being here. Hopefully you learned from this. And, fair notice, my chat is absolutely awesome down here. So my chat here, please discuss with them. They're absolutely wonderful. And leave comments down below if you're watching on the replay. My viewers, my audience is absolutely wonderful. Hope you get to know them. And I do have support pathways if you want to support me. You see here scrolling at the bottom, I got the Cash App, Coffee for Prof. I got Buy Me a Coffee. the Prof's crew. I also have a GoFundMe right now where I'm raising funds and other things you can see at my link tree, which is pinned in the channel description and not whatnot. Um, I also have an amazing Substack, and for those of you interested in further information, please go subscribe at my Substack. It's where I do my best putting together in a written format of information, and there's a lot to come there. Um, and tonight, I got to say, who am I going to give? I'm going to give Jake Brooks. Jake Brooks, email me. I'll give you a free membership to the Substack for your support tonight. Jake Brooks gave a big donation tonight, so I'm going to award Jake Brooks a year-long membership to the Substack, so he can for the next year follow the Substack in depth. And anyhow, thanks everyone for being here. God bless you. Hug your kids, hug your wife. I'll leave you tonight because my throat is shot. There were things, I'm looking at my tabs up here. There are some things that I didn't even get to because I had a few things up here that we just ran out of time. Anyhow, I skipped over them. So God bless. We'll cover it at a future point. So we'll see you soon. Okay. God bless and thanks for being here. Again, hit the like on your way out. Really do appreciate it. Let me say the special good night to Sweet Dude Shibby, Trial Junkie, Who's Your Daddy, Quadaxo Mimi, Jade Conchella, Rhonda Holton, Hey Christina, Heavy Metal Rehab, Lisa, Paula, Keith Kellogg, Miss K, Damian David, Becky B33, Muty Silence, Samantha Springman, Rick Snay was here earlier. Sean Bianchi. Okay, and anyone else who I've missed, It's a New Day, Critter Mama. I know I've missed a lot of people. Old Mort, New Mort, all my best friends, okay? God bless. Thanks for being here. Let me see. That's Tony Hunt coming in. What's up, Tony Hunt? And everyone else, truly do appreciate you. Have a good evening. I'll see you next time. All right. God bless.
Well, obviously we have a rapist in Lincoln Park. He's climbing in your windows. He's snatching your people up, trying to rape them. So y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband because they raping everybody out here.
Bruh.